Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez, our meeting is being streamlined and we're ready to move forward.
I look for good. Yes.
The meeting will now reconvene at 6:03 p.m. City Attorney, please provide the closed session report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. The City Council is now back in open session, having met in closed session to discuss the item listed on the agenda. Staff provided a report, but there was no reportable action taken. This concludes my report. Thank you.
If there's no objections by the City Council, I will now adjourn the closed session meeting, City Council meeting at 6:03 p.m. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, May 8th, 2023, 6:00 p.m. regular joint meeting of the Bell Garden City Council and Successor Agency to the Community Development Commission. The meeting will now come to order at 6:04 p.m. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any of the members should have any conflict of interest, please announce any item you are recusing from due to conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Reynaldo Leal, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Girl Scout Troop number 2543.
Good evening, Mayor, and the councilmen and councilwomen, our staff here, our manager, our chief, and all the employees of our city and our citizens. It's always a high honor to be here and to lead you in prayer. And let us pray and remember, as we pray, we come into the presence of God. So let us bow our heads and just pray. Father, we want to give you all the honor and the glory for the opportunity that you give me to present our city leaders. Father, may your grace and your wisdom be upon them. May every decision that is taken today will be for your glory and for the good of our citizens. Father, lead them in every aspect. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. And can we say amen? Thank you.
Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now be seated.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call roll of the members of the City Council and Successor Agency.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member of the Council and Successor Agency, Marcena.
Present.
Councilmember Chavez.
Present.
Councilwoman Pulido.
Present.
And Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Sanchez.
Present.
And Mayor Chair Cortez will be excused unless there are any objections by the council. Thank you.
We will now move to the presentations. City Manager, please introduce the presentations.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The first recognition that we have here is for residents who recently attained their U.S. citizenship. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Barcena.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Today, I have a recognition here for the students of Mr. Carlos Zavala, who is a teacher over at Fort Park. Mr. Carlos, can you please come up here over by the microphone there? Right over here, sir. Thank you. So we are recognizing 3 individuals from our community, 3 residents that are immigrants, and they've accomplished the huge mission of becoming U.S. citizens. So we're acknowledging that today, and we're gonna make sure that all the other residents know that they can also do that if they just put their mind to it, and their support in our community to get that done. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this proclamation, and this is going to be for our residents, Leticia Sarmiento. Excuse me, it's not a proclamation, it's an actual certificate. So it's Leticia Sarmiento, Maria Velasquez, and Carlos Castillo. The Bell Garden City Council hereby commends you on your dedication, and the perseverance needed to attain your United States citizenship. Citizenship is a common thread that connects all Americans. The United States is a nation bound not by race or religion, but by the shared values of freedom, liberty, and equality. You are an inspiration of one who achieved their American dream. And before I allow the teacher to say a few words, I want to say that all of these individuals that are being recognized today were actually busy at work. So these are very hardworking people from our community, but I was able to get a video clip of one of them thanking the council for the recognition. And I'm going to ask our IT or Hylis if he can please play the video. This is going to be Carlos Castillo.
Mi nombre es Carlos Castillo. Estudié en la escuela Fort Park Outdoor School y gracias a la ciudad que me están me están dando un reconocimiento por hacerme ciudadano, y no solo eso, hay mucha gente que se puede hacer ciudadano. Simplemente me gustaría que también pudieran tener ese voto, y ya somos más latinos y ya tenemos más derecho en votar, opinar, porque un ciudadano cuenta el voto y la opinión. Pienso que si tenemos la oportunidad hay que hacerlo, no hay que dejarlo el día de mañana. Yo lo intenté y gracias a Dios lo pasé. Y gracias por el reconocimiento. No pude estar presente por lo mismo, porque me tocó trabajar, pero como me tocó trabajar y me dijeron que había mucho trabajo, tengo que aprovechar, porque no todo el tiempo hay trabajo, hay tiempos buenos, tiempos malos en la vida. Y cuando hay que trabajar como todo latino.
Okay. Entonces, Leticia Sarmiento and Maria Velázquez no pudieron estar aquí. They were not able to be here, but they wish they could have made it. So we have their teacher from the adult school here. If you'd like to say some words, Mr. Carlos Zavala.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Barcena. Above everything else, I want to say thank you to everyone, and thank you, Mr. Barcena, for supporting the program and being present at our functions and potlucks. And I can say that Carlos Castillo is actually taking English classes, and he's moving quite along very well, along with Leticia, who are also continuing with their studies in English and hopefully even in the high school program. As Mr. Barcena very accurately stated, what unites us, and in these times we need greater unity, are the values of our great country, the United States of America. But thank you very much for your recognition, and thank you very much for recognizing us in front of this very important Bell Gardens community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zavala. And I'm going to go ahead and hand these over to you. But first, we need to get them signed by our mayor pro tem. Is that the procedure when the mayor is absent? Yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. Do we want to do a photo op? Also, maybe did you bring any students today, Mr. Zavala?
Michael?
Okay, if you guys don't mind, we'll do a photo op and then we'll continue.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zavala, make sure you give it to them. Don't steal it, okay? Wait, actually, we're gonna have the mayor.
Him,
pro tem
okay,
sign
sure.
up, all right?
Sure.
You guys can come over here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Another one, 1, 2, 3.
City Manager, can you please introduce the next presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The next item is a National Small Business Month proclamation. I'll turn over for you to read, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, and then we have a business here to receive the proclamation. Stephen Jones will assist with that part of it after you read the proclamation. Thank you.
The City of Bell Gardens hereby gives a proclamation of National Small Business Month to JB Burgers. Whereas since 1963, the United States has recognized small businesses and their impact on American culture and economic throughout the month of May as a designated month aimed to honor the close to 3 million small businesses nationwide and the amazing people who run them. Whereas the Mayor's Office, the Community Development Department, and the Bell Gardens Chamber of Commerce collaborated with the small business community to support its continued growth and affirm our ongoing commitment to helping Bell Gardens small businesses thrive. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor of Bell Gardens, together with the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May as National Small Business Month in Bell Gardens to honor the small businesses who provide services to our residents and visitors.
Stephen Jones, city planner for the city, and we have on hand the owners of JB Burgers who have been in the community for over 51 years and are reopening soon, but we'll have them have words just now. Come on up.
I'm a little short. Hi, my name is Alice Bacolis, and this is my sister Nikki, and together we run our family business, JB Burgers. My father opened the restaurant in 1971. And I've been working there since around 92. And I'm proud to say that we have reopened after that terrible accident that occurred. That occurred in 2021. So 2 years it took me to reopen. Reason for that, my father ended up passing away last year. So the focus was on him, but I'm back in business now. So Thursday, the 11th, we're going to do a grand opening. And I would love it if the community could come out and support us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you guys can come up so we can take a picture. City Manager, can you read the next presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This next item is to recognize National Skilled Nursing Care Week. It's May 14th through the 20th. With that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Pulido.
I've had the honor of being in the field of skilled nursing for over 10 years, so this is very special for me. In recognition of National Skilled Nursing Care Week, which is May 14th to the 20th, the City of Bell Gardens recognizes that in the staff, that skilled nursing facilities for their remarkable dedication and sacrifice amid the unprecedented challenges, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, be it resolved that Alejandra Mayor, the City of Bell Gardens with the City Council do hereby proclaim May 14th to the 20th as Bell Gardens National Skilled Nursing Care Week in the City of Bell Gardens, and we encourage all residents to appreciate, support, and value and respect all Bell Gardens skilled nursing facilities and facility workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we do the next presentation, City Manager?
Thanks again, Mayor Pro Tem. The next item, we would like to recognize National Public Works Week from May 21st through 27th. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you so much for that. In recognition of National Public Works Week, May 21st to 27th, 2023, whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of the public works system, and programs such as water, sewer, streets, and highways, public buildings, and solid waste collection, and the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials and the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments, and materially influenced by the people's attitudes and understandings of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor of City of Bell Gardens and with the city council do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st to May 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Weeks in the City of Bell Gardens. And I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaintly themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works, and to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Signed, Mayor of City of Bell Gardens, along with the City Council.
Councilmember Chavez, if it's okay, if I could call up Carlos Marin, he's our Superintendent at Public Works, to just say a few words and accept the proclamation on behalf of the department.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the award. We're very proud to receive it, but it goes without noted that it's our daily job every day to make this community better for our residents and for our customers to show up every day. We're proud to serve Bell Gardens, and not only because we get paid for it, but it's our duty, and we're proud of to honor Bell Gardens. Some of us are homegrown here per se, and we take extra care, how should I say it, pride in taking care of the community. Thank you very much.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
City Manager, can you please announce the next presentation?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Pro Tem. The next item is to recognize National Police Week of May 14th through the 20th and Peace Officers Memorial Day on May 15th with a proclamation.
The City of Bell Gardens grants this proclamation to the Peace Officers Memorial Day, May 15th, 2023, and National Police Week from May 14th through May 20th. Whereas in the City of Bell Gardens and across the nation, the courageous men and women who protect our citizens wear the uniform and badge with pride as they safeguard our families, homes, and communities. And whereas on Peace Officer Memorial Day and National Police Week, we honor the memory of those heroes who have fallen in the line of duty and recognize all those who have put themselves at risk in the fight against crime, violence, and terrorism. Whereas during National Police Week and throughout the year, we urge all Bell Gardens residents to support law enforcement officers in the fight against crime, especially those dedicated to the safety of our community. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the mayor of the City of Bell Gardens with the council do hereby proclaim May 15th, 2023 as Peace Officer Memorial Day and May 14th through the 20th as National Police Week in the City of Bell Gardens, and encourage all the citizens of Bell Gardens to extend appreciation to our police officers for the vital service they perform and their exemplary dedication to the City of Bell Gardens. Proclaim this 8th day of May, 2023.
And Mayor Pro Tem, if we could ask the police chief to step up to please accept that proclamation. And as he comes up, I'd also like to recognize there's a regular attendee lately at our council meetings that just asked if we could also pass along a framed picture for National Police Week from the Veterans of Bell Gardens group. They just want to recognize a Purple Heart that's noted on this this placard here is for military killed, wounded in action. There are veterans, military reserves, National Guard serving in police across America. And they also just wanted to honor the police department with this as well.
To the city manager and city council, as I wrap up my 31st year here in Bell Gardens, working for this community, I want to thank you for your support and your unwavering support to our officers and our police department over the past couple of years where it's been very difficult. But I have to say that I'm extremely honored, as well as the men and women that serve here, to be able to serve this community. We spend a lot of time here. It is a great community, and we're fortunate to serve in this community. I'd also like to thank the men and women of the Bell Gardens Police Department, not only the sworn folks, but our professional staff as well, as they work hard every day to provide great service to this community. And lastly, if we can just take a moment of silence for all those officers who lost their lives in the line of service, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So do the men and women of the Bell Gardens Police Department. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, 1, 2, and 3. Good.
1, 2, 3. Another 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
City manager, please announce the next presentation.
Thanks again, Mayor Pro Tem. This is the final presentation that we have for the evening. This is for Building and Safety Month. I will turn that back over to you, Mayor Pro Tem. And also we have George Suarez and Emilia Saquez here to receive the proclamation. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Chavez instead. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for that. Building and Safety Month. Building and Safety Month. Whereas during Building and Safety Month, we recognize the role of high quality building standards and the code officials and developers who take into account the safety and economic value of our homes, buildings, and infrastructure. And building and safety professionals are key to the community's resilience in the face of challenges caused by natural disasters such as earthquakes, fires, pandemics, and more. And in coordination with California state agencies that implement the California Building Standards Code's Title 24 California Code of Regulations, building and safety professionals work year-round to ensure the safety of Bell Gardens' built environment and the building and safety professionals who safeguard the places where we live, work, and learn, and who ensure our buildings and physical infrastructure are not only safe, but resilient to protect the investment of homeowners, local governments, and businesses. And building and safety professionals ensure our buildings are constructed using an energy efficient, climate resilient, and sustainable framework and meet the needs of the community today, as well as future generations. Whereas the International Code Council has adopted the theme, quote, building safety standards with you, end quote, for this year's 43rd Building and Safety Month, with the idea of providing an educational and interactive campaign to raise awareness about the importance of building codes in ensuring safety in the space we live, work, play, and learn. Now, therefore, Be it resolved that the mayor of City of Bell Gardens, together with the city council, do hereby proclaim the month of May as the 43rd Annual Building and Safety Month in Bell Gardens, California, to honor the building and safety staff who provide services to our residents and visitors. Signed, Mayor Bell Gardens. Proclaim this 8th day of May 2023 with the rest of the city council.
This time we call up our superintendent, I'm sorry, not our superintendent, our building inspector, George Suarez, and also Amelia Sackis, please.
Good evening, Madam Pro Tem Mayor and City Council, our staff, city manager, and the rest of the staff that's here. It's our honor to be here. Oh boy, I think the chief said 31 years. I think I'm going on 36 and Amelia's on 31. So we both take a lot of pride in what we do in serving the community, and we thank the community for their support as well, understanding that the life and safety is really what we're concerned about. And I can tell you in the years that we've been here, that I've been here, there hasn't been a single lawsuit, arbitration, or anything of that nature of any construction that has taken place. So I take pride in that, luck, whatever we want to call it, skill, but it's just something that, again, our department takes a lot of pride in assuring the safety of the residents. And I think the residents do understand that it's for their benefit, for the life and safety as well. Sure. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you, staff. Thank you, the community.
Speakers by the doors, man. We could close in. Yeah, I think.
We will now move to public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Public participation is now open. City Clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items not listed on the City Council Successor joint agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, subject to an overall 30-minute period unless announced otherwise. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will first hear from the speakers that are in person.
Bruce A. Crow.
All right, good evening. This is non-agenda. I would just like to remind the council that some important news has come in about the Central Basin Municipal Water District. Alex Rojas has been indicted. He will be going to trial.
and his friend Luis Rojas of Del Terra Construction Company from the Bassett Unified School District. They have 18 counts of various accounts against them: perjury, embezzlement, bribery. They did file for their demurrer in front of a judge last week, and the judge didn't buy any of their nonsense. So they will be going to trial. He will be having a plea hearing. And hopefully we are going to get justice for the ratepayers, partly of Bell Gardens, Downey, and about 20 other cities. And they're also going to find out if the Bassett Unified, the attorneys group that represented them, namely OMLO, covered up some of the activity in the Bassett Unified with Del Terra, who now goes by the name of Capstone. Whether they covered up all the information and that they should go ahead and file a civil suit against Luis Rojas, who is involved with the Montebello Unified School District as well. So we're going to find out all the information. It depends on whether Alex pleads guilty or not guilty. If he pleads guilty for a lesser sentence, there will probably be some people that he will be throwing under the bus. And we are going to find out everybody's role that they had participated in. That includes Downey, my city, the current mayor, the current assembly member, who was a member of the OMLO law firm, the former assistant city manager, who was allowed to go on administrative leave for over 9 months with pay, and was allowed to retire instead of terminating his employment. And he has disappeared. He was also on the Central Basin Board as a non-elected official. And he was absent for about a year, but he has resurfaced. He's out in West Covina as a consultant. Isn't that amazing? All this time, and now he resurfaces. So we hope to get justice, and we hope the jury and the prosecution goes well. And we hope the ratepayers can be reimbursed, at least to the 5 big purveyors of water. Thank you.
Next speaker, Monica Ruiz. Maria Ruiz.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Maria Ruiz. I've been living in this city about 30 years ago. One of the 3 reasons that I am here, I am just to, to make the request to see how the police department and even the city help us, the residents, the big problem that we have, not only on my street, but today I am speaking of my street because it's every day, every afternoon. The neighbors park, I say park because they do, in the middle of the street. We know the size of the streets are to park, but they park in the middle of the street. They get off. Before coming here, there was one neighbor, a visitor to a neighbor, and I even took a picture. You can see the car without the driver, but he parked his car there. So you and I have to drive the street, but then we have to move aside because they are parked in the street. Last Friday, they were at the 2 sides. So I was arriving. So what do? I just wait for somebody to move. I couldn't just drive. And this going on every day. My complaint or my concern also is that we do not see too much, or we haven't seen any patrol from the police department. They don't see it neither. That's why they feel and they so free to do what they've been doing, because they know that the police doesn't patrol the street. So they do it every day, especially since 4 o'clock PM ahead. That's one. Like I said at the beginning, the whole city, and not only this city, we know this is a problem going on, but I'm talking about my city, I'm talking about my street. My street is on Purdy between Ludell and Lubick. And all this is because my neighbors to my 6934, they are the one who does it. That's one complaint. And the other one, like I told you, they are parked there without a driver. They get out, they visit, they stay there, blah, blah here, blah, blah there. And whenever they finish, they leave. They go back to their car. And the other issue is that their kids, especially on Friday and the Friday and Saturday,
That's
the
your time,
kids
ma'am.
at
Thank
10
you.
o'clock.
That's your time.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll have Chief get information from you. Thank you so much. Next speaker, Lilia Chavez.
Buenas tardes, miembros del concilio. Nos volvemos a mirar. El motivo que vengo yo ahora aquí, ven que siempre estoy pidiendo lo que es el apoyo para los que vivimos en las trailas. En estas fin de semana, los vecinos, la mayoría de ellos recibieron una hoja en la que supuestamente el dueño dice que se tiene que pagar el 10% extra empezando el mes de junio del 2023, en la cual nosotros sabemos que no es correcto, porque yo de antemano yo lo sé. Y entonces ellos lo están mirando como que los parques de trailer no están incluidos en la renta. Nosotros sabemos que sí. Entonces ellos están queriendo obligar a todos a que se les dé el 10% de renta empezando todo lo que es el mes de junio del 2023. Las otras ocasiones he venido sola, pero hoy me acompañaron los vecinos. Ellos vienen porque a ellos les surge que esto que ustedes han puesto como regla y como ordenanza, que no la dejen así nada más, que por favor nos ayuden a enforzarla, porque el Señor está haciendo lo que quiere y además no es un solo dueño, no sabemos ni cuántos sean y nosotros queremos que por favor nos ayuden en eso y que ayuden a dar presión, porque ellos están haciendo lo que quieren con esta gente y conmigo también. Muchísimas gracias.
I'm going to ask for translation so everybody can hear what Ms. Chavez stated.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Maria. Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Lilia Chavez. Good afternoon to the members of the City Council. The reason that I'm here is to ask for your support for those who live in trailers. This weekend, we received a piece of paper asking for 10% more starting in June of 2023. And we know that this is not right. They say that trailers are not included in the rent control, and they're asking for 10% more rent starting in June. I'm asking for you to please not leave us behind when it comes to this ordinance and to have you help us enforce the ordinance. And it's not just one owner, it's more than one owner. So I'm asking for your help to pressure them. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that translation. Next speaker, Yolanda Gomez.
Madam Mayor, if I may, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I just want to let the previous commenters know that we're going to be looking into what you reported today. I checked with legal, so they're going to be looking into it. All right. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos ustedes aquí. Mi nombre es Yolanda Gómez. Discúlpenme que estoy un poco nerviosa porque en verdad uno nunca piensa que va a pasar por estos pasos, ¿verdad? Nosotros somos de las trailitas, como dice mi vecina. Tenemos 30 años viviendo aquí en Bell Gardens y nunca hemos tenido tanto problema como lo hemos tenido en este tiempo. Nos han llegado, es cierto, los papeles, nos los trajeron el día 4, 5 y 6. Supuestamente ellos dicen que nomás nos dan 30 días. Yo le dije que no estaba bien, que era por lo menos nos deberían de dar más tiempo y que no teníamos el control que teníamos nosotros el control de rentas del 4%. Ellos dijeron que eso ya está hecho y así es y así se va a quedar. Entonces yo les pido por favor, las trailas son de nosotros. Lo único que ellos tienen es el terreno, ellos pagan la luz, pagan el agua y la basura y el gas. De lo demás es de nosotros. No, ellos no han arreglado nada. Supuestamente habían ido a arreglar unas cosas y las dejaron peor. Entonces yo quería pedirles por favor de que tomaran ustedes también caso o pusieran un poco más de atención en todo este problema que están trayendo, porque no solamente hay un espacio de trailas, Bell Gardens tiene más lugares donde hay más trailas, y si ellos permiten, si ellos están empezando con nosotros, van a empezar con los demás. Gracias. Otra cosa que quería decirles sobre no sé si pueda decirlo de una vez, sobre los ventas de drogas. A un lado de con nosotros hemos tenido uno de ventas. Ha habido 3 muertes y la verdad eso para nosotros no está bien. Está enfrente de la escuela, que tenemos muchas escuelas aquí y eso la verdad tampoco no está bien. Entonces nosotros les pedimos que hay muchos niños, esos no es una buena ayuda para nuestros jóvenes. Así que por favor se los agradezco mucho y que tomen en cuenta eso, que hay muchos jóvenes, hay muchas escuelas y esas cosas cerca de las escuelas no está bien. Muchos van a traer más asesinatos, van a traer más gente con problemas. Gracias.
Yes, good afternoon to the City Council. My name is Yolanda Gomez. I'm a little bit nervous because you never think that something like this is going to happen to you, but I've been here in Bell Gardens for 30 years in the little trailers, and we've never had so many problems as we're having now. We were given papers on the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, and supposedly they were going to give us 30 days. And we said, that's not right. They're asking for the 4% when the trailers are ours. They have the land and they pay for water, gas, and trash, but we pay for everything else, and they haven't fixed anything. Supposedly they came to fix something and they just left it in worse shape. So we're asking you to please pay more attention to this problem. And it's not just one trailer space. Bell Gardens has more than one trailer space. And if they're doing this to us, they will do it with others as well. Also, I don't know if I can talk about this now, but the issue of drug sales. We've had a drug sale happen next to us. We've had 3 deaths And this is not okay. This happens right in front of a school, and we have a lot of schools in Bell Gardens, and this is just not okay. There are a lot of kids, and this drug sale isn't helping our youth. There are a lot of youth here. There are a lot of schools, and having that near our schools just brings around more problematic people and murders. And so I ask you to please consider all of that. Thank you so much.
Más hay que decir que sí tenemos la información y ya agarró las cartas también para que trabajamos juntos con la ciudad para resolver ese problema. Okay. So I just reiterated that they did get the information from our staff to work together so we can try to possibly find a solution for this. Thank you. The next speaker, Kenya Nunez.
Good afternoon, council members. I want to say so many things, but my main one is rent control. And is there any low-cost housing around Bell Gardens? Because most of my friends, they're always trying to reach to me to ask me, is there any low-income housing around Bell Gardens? I don't have the answer. I wish I could help them more with that. We can see there's a lot of space / lots around Bell Gardens. And point of view, we can use it to build more in low-income housing around Bell Gardens and help these families that cannot afford high prices of housing or apartments. The same with the trailers. We can make space for them since these agents want to keep pressuring them to move, then we can help them with that too. There's a lot right here, it's empty. There's another one around Bell Gardens that I could see and give you the name of the streets. We can use those places, those space, and that money probably could be for the city, for you guys, for our community. That's all. Thank you.
Next speaker, Carmen Rodriguez.
Buenas tardes a todos aquí presentes. Mi nombre es Carmen Rodríguez, vivo en un trailer park aquí en la ciudad de Bell Gardens. En esta ocasión voy a ser muy breve. Seguimos insistiendo en una ordenanza de control de renta específicamente para los trailer park y un comité donde acudir y exponer que haya una acción favorable, ya que no se está respetando la ordenanza. Se respetó en cuanto al piso, 4%. El parking de 70 a 100 son el 43%. La ciudad tiene que enviar una carta directa a los encargados del terreno o al corporativo para que ellos vean que somos respaldados por la ciudad. Yo personalmente les pido, nos hagan esa carta. Sé que ustedes pueden hacerlo. Gracias.
Yes, good afternoon to the City Council and everyone present. My name is Carmen Rodriguez. I live in a trailer park and I will be brief. We continue insisting on an ordinance that is specific to those who live in trailer parks and also a committee that will take favorable action. The 4%, the parking between 70 and 100, and the 43%. The city has to send a letter to these owners or to the corporation so that they can see that the city supports us. I kindly request that you send that letter. Thank you so much.
Next speaker, Myra Rodriguez.
Buenas tardes a todos. Les doy las gracias por permitirme hablar con ustedes, ¿verdad? En esta tarde yo quiero hablar que sí hagan un control de renta para las trailers. A mí me ha tocado presenciar a una compañera, una amiga, que las sacan de las trailitas en plena lluvia, con sus hijos en plena lluvia, mojándose. El dueño la acosa. El dueño la incita a provocarla, a que haga cosas cuando uno está en esos momentos de crisis y que se siente acorralada con miedo. Sí me gustaría que tomen acción y como acaba de decir mi vecina Carmen Rodríguez, ustedes pueden mandar esa carta, tienen gente. Y cuando la gente habla, ¿por qué los empleados no saben dar instrucciones? No saben preparar a la gente. Yo creo que deben de preparar a la gente para estas, sepan responder, o si no, con educación, por lo menos. Porque es grosero cuando uno habla aquí, le contestan a uno grosero. No sé y no tengo tiempo y diríjase con otra persona. ¿A quién nos dirigimos si no son ellos? ¿Quién tiene la autoridad aquí? ¿Verdad? Y me refiero también, me permito en decirles también que no estoy a favor a que aprueben lo de la venta de drogas, de marihuana.
Señora, eso va a ser en la otra agenda que pueda hablar.
Gracias.
Ahorita no, gracias.
Ok, gracias. Quiero que apoyen a la gente, por favor.
Yes, good afternoon to all. My name is Mayra Rodriguez, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I am in favor of a rent control for those who live in trailers. I have witnessed a friend get kicked out in the pouring rain with her children after being harassed and provoked precisely in moments of crisis. I'm asking you to please take action. And like my neighbor Carmen Rodriguez said, please send a letter from the city. When people call here, they don't know how to respond. And they've even responded in a rude way to the calls. Either they don't know or they don't have the information. So who is in charge here? I'm not in favor of allowing drug sales here. And I'm asking you please for your support.
Next speaker, Cindy Highgard.
My name is Cindy Gareda, and I've been living here for 25 years. I actually come here with my mom. This is my first time here, and I just wanted to speak about two things here that have come that I've heard that you guys are planning on opening weed dispensaries. I'm a future educator, and I feel that weed dispensaries around low-income
That's an
cities.
agenda item, so you can speak on that on the next.
I actually, no, I think you shouldn't be interrupting me. I'm here speaking about the agenda and I'm going to talk about it regardless of whether you like it or not.
Not that this is not the agenda item for it. It's the next open session for public comment. This is for non-agenda items.
Non-agenda. Okay, that's fine. We'll speak about it in the next one. Okay, so this one is going to be about homeless. We live in a city where I know it's low income, and I feel like our city needs to do something more about the homeless issue, because my mom, she owns property, and there's a lot of homeless here, throwing drugs, there's human feces, and I feel that, if we don't do something about it, the issue's never going to be resolved. And I know it takes a village for us to do that, but I feel, and I'm asking you guys that maybe you guys can come with a plan, because I don't think it's fair that I have to be calling the city or the police to file a report for every time I see human feces and dirty clothes that are, behind our house. And we want to try to keep the city clean, and maybe you guys can work with the city and the public works. Maybe you guys can try to do something about it. Thank you.
If there's no objection by members of the City Council Successor Agency, I will now close public participation for non-agenda items.
Mayor Pro Tem, I do have one person who's virtually participating, has their hand raised, and we still have time on the clock for the 30-minute limit.
Okay,
Thank you. Zoom ID Doris Serrano, if you would please select the microphone icon, you may proceed to speak.
Así, mira, buenas tardes para todos. Yo quisiera apoyar, vengo a dar mi apoyo a toda esa gente que vive en las trailas y vengo a apoyar esas madres, vengo a apoyar esas familias que son de bajos recursos y que están viviendo en esos lugares porque realmente no tienen para vivir tal vez en una casa, quizás como, pues, ¿verdad? Tal vez una casa que esté fuera tal vez de sus recursos. Y no creo que nadie quiera vivir allí en esos lugares, soportando abusos, discriminación, provocaciones y desalojos. Creo que la ciudad de verdad tiene que hacer algo al respecto. Ya hemos estado viniendo cada semana que ustedes tienen juntas. Somos una unión de vecinas, estamos apoyando, venimos a hablar por los derechos de todas esas personas. Somos humanos y estamos pidiendo que por favor ustedes implementen. No les estamos pidiendo algo imposible. Y agradecemos lo que ustedes hicieron de ayudar a pasar un control de renta, pero por favor, necesitamos que ahora la implementen, porque ¿de qué sirve que entonces todos hayan pasado una ley, pero estas personas hayan quedado fuera de esa cobertura? Ahora estas personas que son propietarios están aprovechándose de estas personas y las están oprimiendo y no creo que sea justo. Y ese es mi apoyo para estas personas. Yo también he sufrido desalojos y también he sufrido recriminación, abusos. También he sido sacada con mis niños, con mis 5 hijos a la calle, sin tener ningún pudor la propietaria y diciendo mentiras, ganó su caso. Y es lo mismo que está sucediendo con estas personas. Esos propietarios o cooperativas, yo no sé de esos lugares, ni siquiera les permiten pagar con un money order para poder ellos tener el control y el poder de sacarlos cuando ellos quieran. Por favor, les pedimos, escúchennos, somos gente, somos humanos. Por favor, les pido que nos escuchen y que pasen un control de renta también para estas personas, que haya una cobertura que los defienda. Gracias.
Thank you. And that was the last person virtually participating, but we did receive one public comment card and I will read it out for them. They didn't want to speak. Michael Sandoval does not verify that marijuana shops coming to our city of Bell Gardens. And that, and we did also receive one public comment by email, and I've already provided to the full council all of the emails. This one was regarding rent stabilization and eviction. And with that, that was the last comments on non-public comment items, non-agenda items, excuse me.
So if there's no objection by members of the city council successor agency, I will now close public participation for non-agenda items. Public participation is now open for items listed on the city council successor agency joint agenda. City clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
Thank you. Members of the public will have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the City Council Successor Agency Joint Agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber.
Bruce A. Crow.
All right, in the words of Pauly Shore, I'm back. Okay, it's not funny, but it's amusing at the same time. It's funny how residents look to you in government to solve their problems when you are the ones that create the problems. You were easy, folks. You are the ones that create the problems. I mean, number 5 says resolution approving the city's zero emission bus rollout. How many of you can say how much that's going to cost? None of you can. You don't know how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost a lot. Number 7, resident art and yard sale. Why do you need to get involved with art sales? Your job is to pave the roads, take care of the police, the fire department, the lights, the sewer. That's your job. When you start expanding out into these other areas, you have no clue how to do it. There's no way. I always say that government, you guys could run the Sahara Desert and there'd be a shortage of sand within 6 months. This is how inept you are. So you need to stop getting involved in these things. Now, number 8 says the request for an ordinance to regulate, authorize and regulate commercial cannabis. Now, everybody knows the federal government says it's illegal to have marijuana. But in the state of California, you're allowed to have up to 6 plants for your own personal use. And you have to hope that you don't get any male plants because they will pollinate and ruin the female plants, okay? But to allow people to come in and build these facilities and have these filters spewing out this stink and everything else that goes with that is a joke, because in California, the state was actually trying to lure you with the idea that we're going to have 4,400 permits up and down the state, and the state's going to bring in all this tax money. Well, they only have 900 because of the over-regulations, and they run the businesses out of the state. It's not economically feasible, and the people don't want it, because all you're going to do is create situations where people that smoke this high-grade stuff just get lazy and stupid. And that's all that's going to happen. So don't approve any ordinances or think you're going to regulate anything, because you're not. Thank you.
Aida Fuentes.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Aida Fuentes, and I'm here to speak in support of the item 8 by legalizing cannabis. We can help to ensure that safe and taste product is available. Currently, individuals who purchase cannabis on the black market have no way of knowing that they are what they're getting, which can be put at their health to a risk. Additionally, the legalizing of cannabis can bring significant benefits to the city, including economic benefits, medical benefits, reducing crime, social justice, and consumer safety. By legalizing marijuana.
I need to remind everybody to please keep order. Excuse me, please keep order to allow City Council to continue the meeting. We have rules, so please quiet and let this person speak.
The city could create a safer and healthier community for all its residents. I urge you to consider the positive impact to legalize it and to have a support of the item 8. I live in this city and I had to travel to somewhere else to buy it. I'm a human being. I have my rights. I pay my taxes, so I'm asking you for your support. Thank you.
Once again, I have to remind everybody in the chambers, there are no commentaries after. We do have rules. If you're going to be clapping, making comments after, you're going to be removed, so please let us continue forward with Jesus.
I'm Jesus Escandon. I'm here to express my strong support for item 8. As you're aware, there are many people who suffer chronic pain, debilitating illnesses, anxiety, depression, and other mental conditions. These individuals rely on cannabis as a form of medication to manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life. Unfortunately, many of them are forced to purchase cannabis from illegal sources, which not only puts them at risk of legal repercussions, but also exposes them to potentially dangerous products. By allowing illegal dispensaries to operate, we can ensure that those who require cannabis for medical purposes have access to a safe and regulated product. This would not only benefit the individuals themselves, but would also be a positive step toward reducing the demand for illegal cannabis and promoting public safety. I understand that some people may have concerns about the establishment of dispensaries in the city. However, I believe that the benefits far outweigh any potential negative impacts, if any. With appropriate regulations in place, a legal dispensary can operate responsibly and safely, serving as a valuable resource for those in need. Thank you.
Next speaker, Francisco Hernandez.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Francisco. Soy residente aquí de Bell Gardens. Yo estoy en contra de esos dispensarios de marihuana porque allá hay mucha juventud que está cayendo en las drogas. Yo veo en la calle, cuando pasan de la calle, los niños ya de 14, 15 años ya van drogaditos. Y eso es una mentira que sirve para medicina. Si quieren la medicina, lo pueden agarrar con el doctor, no con los dispensarios. Gracias.
In order to comply with rules of decorum, please refrain from any disruptive activity that will interfere with the city council to continue this meeting. This is a warning to stop the disruptive behavior pursuit of SB 1100. Failure to do so may result in you being removed from the chambers.
This is an English translation of Mr. Francisco Hernandez. Good afternoon to all. My name is Francisco Hernandez. I'm a resident of Bell Gardens, and I'm against the marijuana dispensaries. There are a lot of youth who are falling into doing drugs, and they are 14 and 15 years old, and they are already drug addicts. It's a lie that this is medication. If you need medication, you can go to a doctor. Thank you.
Tardes, mi nombre es Estela Mata, yo soy residente de aquí de Bell Gardens y él es el motivo por lo que estoy aquí, es porque me di cuenta que van a poner los de estos de marihuana, los dealers, y yo no estoy de acuerdo porque de por sí que los niños en las escuelas chiquitos de 12 a 13 años, de que no aprenden nada. No es justo que la ciudad de Bell Gardens apruebe eso, porque cuando nosotros anduvimos luchando, mija, por el control de rentas, anduvimos a toque y toque puertas y la gente estaba diciendo que ellos no confiaban en los concejales, que porque ellos daban el voto y al final los concejales hacían lo que ellos querían. Entonces, una señora a mí me mencionó de eso, que aquí en Bell Gardens iban a poner eso. Yo le contesté que no. Entonces, nosotros anduvimos luchando por un Bell Gardens limpio, un Bell Gardens que de que fuera de drogas. Entonces, ¿cuál es la idea que anduvimos peleando nosotros tanto para tener un Bell Gardens mejor y nada que aquí en la ciudad van a vender la marihuana? Mija, no es justo, porque ¿qué sentirían ustedes? Que sus familiares cayeran en esas drogas. Eso no es justo porque porque es una situación muy fea. Yo lo estoy pasando, lo viví y yo no se lo recomiendo a nadie que tenga uno hijos en las drogas. Muchas gracias. Ese es mi comentario. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is
Remind
Estela
everybody
Mata.
to
I'm a
please
resident.
refrain from clapping. It is disruptive activity and does not allow us to continue forward with the meeting in a timely manner.
This is the English translation. Good afternoon. My name is Estela Mata. I'm a resident of Bell Gardens. When I realized that they were going to be putting in those things, the marijuana dealers, I came to say I don't agree. There are children 12 and 13 years in school and they're not learning. It's not fair for the city to support this. When we were knocking on doors all of the time and doing so much for rent control, and we would talk to residents who said that they didn't trust the city council members and that they just do whatever they want. When a woman mentioned to me about the dispensaries, I said, no, because we want a clean city. We don't want any drugs. Why would we fight so much for rent control and to have a better Bell Gardens, and now you're just going to be selling marijuana? It's not fair. How would you like it if one of your family members fell into drugs? I experienced that. I lived through it. So thank you very much.
Maria Martinez. Maria Martinez. I'll move on to the next person. Lilia Chavez.
Buenas tardes, ya regresé. Miren, el punto mío es muy cortito. Yo estoy apoyando lo que es la venta de garage y también el arte para los residentes. También quiero hablar un poquito nada más de lo que es de la venta de marihuana y este tipo de cosas. En el lugar nosotros donde vivimos sí ha habido, la verdad, 3 muertos, 3 o 4, porque supuestamente era un negocio de teléfonos y ahí entraban y salían, entraban y salían. Nosotros sabíamos que no era eso lo que estaban haciendo, porque se entiende que un negocio de teléfonos se tiene un horario para cerrar y ellos estaban hasta medianoche, 1 de la mañana, o sea, no cerraban. Y eso fue lo que sucedió. Entonces, yo siento que también si están enfrente de una escuela, debería haber un poquito de control y tener un poquito de más, por decir así, oficiales que nos estén echando las vueltitas, porque la verdad sí se pone feo. Entonces, eso es nada más mi comentario y mi punto de vista. Muchas gracias.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm back. I support the art sale and the garage sale for residents. Regarding the sale of drugs, we have already had 3 to 4 deaths. And there is a business that was supposedly a phone business, but there were people coming in and out of it all the time. And supposedly a phone business would have regular hours, but they were staying open until midnight or 1 a.m. So we know that they were selling. And if it's right in front of a school, there has to be some sort of control. There have to be officers. It's gotten really bad. Thank you very much for your time.
I'd like to make a motion to limit individuals' public comment time from 3 minutes to 1 minute in light of the voluminous number of comments we anticipate, and to allow people the opportunity to participate in a timely fashion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Limited time to 1 minute. Can I get a roll call from City Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Marcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Sanchez.
Yes. Next speaker, Kenyon Nunez.
Buenas tardes, concejales. Estamos ahorita hablando acerca de la abierta de marihuana. Como vemos, algunas personas pueden sentirse bien en fumar eso, pero para otras personas como yo, que trabajo para un hospital, yo no puedo oler, yo no puedo tener mi ropa oliendo a marihuana. Y una de otras de las cosas es, cuando yo huelo eso, a mí me hace revolver el estómago. A mí no me hace los efectos de como otra gente. Me siento muy bien, qué bueno. Pero para mi hija y para mí no está bien. Eso no está bien. De por sí estamos tratando de educar a nuestros hijos a alejarse de eso. Yo crecí en el DARE program. Algunos de ustedes tal vez crecieron en eso. Y si no saben de qué es el DARE program, el chief les puede decir un poco de eso o pueden Google. Ese programa es decir, no drogas. De por sí estamos... Gracias.
This is the English
Again, please
translation.
refrain from disruptive behavior in the chambers.
This is an English translation. We were having some sound difficulties. Good afternoon to the council members. We're talking now about the issue of marijuana. As we can see, some people feel okay smoking it, but for me, I work in a hospital. I can't even smell it. It is not okay to me. We're here trying to educate our kids and keep them away from this. I don't know if you've heard of the DARE program. I grew up with the DARE program. If you haven't heard of it, I'm sure the chief could tell you more about it, or you can Google it. Thank you.
Estela Mata.
Buenas tardes. Ya vine, pero dije, bueno, si me dan otra oportunidad, pues vengo. Mira, mija, de que yo he ido pasando por la suba y entonces he mirado mucha juventud que no está en sus 5 sentidos. No es justo lo que estamos viendo con los jóvenes. Todos los jóvenes andan como sonámbulos. No es justo porque uno nomás de verle los ojos, luego sabemos que andan todos marihuanos. Entonces, ¿cuál es el chiste? ¿Cuál es el chiste que aquí en Bell Gardens vayan a poner eso? Si nosotros estábamos luchando porque los hijos estudiaran, salieran adelante, fueran a los colegios, no para que tuvieran eso a la mano. Eso no está bien. Eso no está bien porque nosotros queríamos que nuestros hijos fueran hijos de bien. ¿Por qué no ponen más deportes? Gracias.
Once again, I'm going to remind everybody to please refrain from any disruptive activity, and that includes clapping after a speaker. Translator, can you please translate that?
My name is Estela Mata. Good afternoon. I came up once already, but if I get another opportunity, then okay. We've seen a lot of kids around who are not in their right mind, and it's just not fair. It's like they're sleepwalking. You can see it in their eyes that they're on drugs. What's the idea of putting this here in Bell Gardens? We want our kids to go to school. We want them to go on to college, and this is not okay. We want our kids to be okay. We want them to be in sports, for example. Thank you.
Carmen Rodriguez.
Nuevamente, buenas tardes. Bueno, seré breve también. Sé que independientemente de lo que uno opine, ustedes tomarán su propia decisión de aprobar la ordenanza para regularizar el cannabis. Esperemos que el día de mañana no sea uno de sus jóvenes o un familiar que se vea directa o indirectamente involucrado en un problema mayor por el consumo y pues el estado que tienen al usar el cannabis, que no reaccionan bien, que tal vez ya lo consumen a escondidas y al aprobarse lo harán deliberadamente, puesto que está a unas cuantas cuadras de su hogar. Y espero que no vaya a ser un joven de los de 10, 12 años que ya empiezan a consumir y termine en un hospital o un poquito más adelante. Y no vaya a ser un familiar. Gracias.
Les tengo que recordar que por favor no hagan aplauso después de los comentarios para seguir la junta, por favor.
Good afternoon again. My name is Carmen Rodriguez. I will be brief. Apart from our opinions, I know that you will make you will make your own decision. And I hope that you don't find that one of your family members gets into problems because of consuming marijuana. Maybe perhaps they do it in a hidden way now, but if there are these places around, they will just do it out in the open. They are 10 and 12 years old and they start doing it, they may end up in a hospital. Thank you.
Cindy H.
Hi, I'm back. So my name is Cindy Gareda, and I'm just here to let you guys know, maybe you guys might not like to hear this, but I think you guys heard enough that many of us are not okay with the whole weed dispensary. I think that hopefully you guys, understand where we're coming from. We're not here to attack you guys. We're here to, have some sort of understanding, we have children. I have 2 boys and, I don't want my kids to be exposed to that type of, drugs. And even though you guys say that it's, regulated, I mean, that many times that doesn't even happen. So I just want to, have you guys understand a little bit more. I'm not here to pinpoint and tell you guys that you guys are doing everything wrong, which I know you guys have done so many things right, but I just want you guys to understand that, I have 2 boys. I don't want my boys growing up with that type of, dispensaries, maybe next to my house. I just want you guys to understand, and I hope you guys are able to understand and maybe you guys could take initiative. Thank you so much.
Marisela Durasco.
Hello, my name is Marisela Dorasco. Okay, I'm going to go straight to the point. If the person, I feel sorry for the person who needs that type of medication, but they can go to a doctor or they can drive to another city to get their weed. Okay, first, I heard they had the blueprints from one of the big dispensaries with different floors, and I think it's not right. First, I think you have to think about in our city, and you guys came from this city, so you should be understanding what is my point. I know Alejandra Cortez when she was 5 years old. I know her mom. So my kids, they've been raising right here in Bell Gardens. I've been here for more than 30 years. So I want Bell Gardens free. And if you need medicine, go to another city and please help us. We don't want dispensaries here. Help us, please. You can get money from another source. And politics are politics, and you can do politics in a good way. Thank you.
Jose Ablis.
Good evening, City Council. I appreciate you giving us the time to come up here and speak about the dispensaries. Chief has done an amazing job. We're lucky to have you, Chief. Okay. But unfortunately, people do bad things. We had a cell phone business selling drugs right in our little city. Can you imagine what these dispensaries will do to us? The chief has done an amazing job with the amount of people that he has. The men and women of this department do a great job. But behind closed doors, they didn't know they were running a drug trafficking trade just 1 week ago. Can you imagine what the dispensaries will do? You guys have done an amazing job. You skate around town. You're part of the community. All of you are part of the community and do an amazing job in what you've implemented. But implementing this is going to be a little disappointing because Bell Gardens is about 2.5 square miles. Every kid that walks to school could be walking by one of these dispensaries and be offered some drugs if possible. So just be careful. Thank you.
Philip Rivera. Felipe Rivera.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Felipe Rivera. Nomás vengo que me opongo porque la mayoría que ocupa eso no lo ocupan, lo usan nomás la mayoría son jóvenes en realidad la gente mayor que es la que debería que es la que según está aprobado para ellos, no lo hace, son puros jóvenes. Eso es todo, gracias.
Ya, está bien.
Good afternoon. My name is Felipe Rivera. I am opposed because the majority of people who need this don't really need it. They're just using it. And this is supposedly approved for adults, but it's the young people who use it. Thank you.
Gabriela Rivera.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Gabriela Rivera. Llevo 20 años viviendo aquí porque creo que es una comunidad muy segura y ustedes están queriendo pasar esto de la Plan 8. Se me hace que no está bien por los jóvenes y mucha inseguridad aquí. Así es que por favor, no 8.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriela Rivera. I've been living here for 20 years because it's a very safe community. I'm not okay with the Plan 8. There are a lot of young people here and a lot of insecurity. No on 8. Thank you.
Alma Cordero.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alma Cordero. Gracias por hacer esta reunión y que puedan escuchar a todas estas personas que están aquí, que están diciendo que no, por favor, no pongan estos dispensarios a la droga. Aquí tienen a los policías, varios policías aquí. Ellos pueden decirles cuánto una droga puede afectar no solo a un joven, pero a toda la familia, a toda esta comunidad. Por favor, no estamos de acuerdo en que pongan esos dispensarios. Gracias por escucharnos. Y ni un penny que puedan ganar de ganancia de esos negocios, no solo un penny vale la pena de una vida que pueda perder un joven, mucho menos el sufrimiento que esa persona joven, una niña, un niño, un adulto puede tener al mal usar su droga. No vale la pena ni un solo penny, señores. Gracias.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Alma Cordero. Thank you for this meeting and for listening to all of the people here. We are saying no. Please don't put in the dispensaries. There are a lot of police officers here, and I'm sure they can say how this affects youth and how it affects a whole entire family. We do not agree with the dispensaries. Thank you for listening. Also, not one single penny is worth losing the life of any youth. It's not worth one single penny. Thank you.
Eddie Brand.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Eddie Brand y también yo me opongo a que pongan los dispensarios. No necesitamos más delincuencia en esta área. No necesitamos más delincuencia en nuestro Bell Gardens. Ya, si no hay dispensarios, tenemos problemas con tanta delincuencia, con tanto drogadito. Si ahorita que no hay dispensarios en esta área, vienen de otras áreas, ¿qué podemos esperar ya cuando ya hayan más dispensarios aquí? Porque entonces ya toda la gente cuando hayan esos negocios aquí, van a tener la posibilidad de venirse de otras áreas a comprar aquí. Es cierto, ustedes se benefician con los locales comerciales, porque todos los locales comerciales dependen un dinero para ustedes también, porque por eso es que existe el City Hall, porque si no fuera así, ¿cómo es que van a sobrevivir? Es todo.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Eddie Bran. I am opposed to the dispensaries. We don't need any more crime in this area, any more crime in Bell Gardens. We already have crime without any dispensaries, and they'll be coming in from other areas. What can we expect if there are dispensaries here? They'll just come in from other areas to buy. You as city council benefit from shopping centers, and that's why the city council exists. Thank you.
María Carmen Lomeli.
Buenas tardes. Por favor, les suplico de la forma más urgente. Bell Gardens no era lo que es a hoy. A hoy estamos llenos de delincuencia, de rateros, de indigentes, de gente agresiva. Yo ya estoy atacada, yo ya estoy nerviosa solo con salir a la marqueta porque no sé a qué horas va a encontrarme un ratero, un delincuente. Si ustedes autorizan la droga, esto va a explotar peor con tantas personas malas. Estamos en un tiempo donde la gente es agresiva por nada. Incluso sin droga, ahora con droga no quiero imaginar. Bell Gardens no es nada de lo que fue hace tiempo. Por favor, se lo suplico por mucha gente de la que no está aquí, que quisieron estar y sin embargo no lo están, se lo suplico. Yo vivo aterrada. Esto, no, por favor, se lo suplico, no drogas. Tenemos delincuentes suficientes, rateros suficientes. Ellos ya no les importa robar en la mañana, golpear a la persona, matar. Gracias.
Good afternoon. Please, I beg you, it is urgent. Please, we're already full of crime and homelessness and aggressive people. I'm nervous just going out because of thieves and crime, and people are aggressive now for no reason, even without drugs. In Bell Gardens is not like it used to be. Please, I'm begging you on behalf of the people who are not here. I live terrified, and please, I urge you, we already have enough crime, we have enough stealing and killing. Thank you.
Silvia Martinez.
Sí, buenas tardes. Gracias por darnos esta oportunidad de expresarnos y totalmente en contra. No, por favor. Esto, como lo han dicho la mayoría, a la larga es un gasto tremendo que con nada vamos a sacar a nuestros hijos de las drogas. Esto es horrible, le digo, nosotros, yo totalmente y todas las personas, la mayoría que estamos aquí, estamos totalmente en contra. Por el beneficio de nuestros niños, estamos solamente protegiendo a nuestros niños, que ya están totalmente influenciados con drogas, con tantos vicios. Entonces, por favor, protejamos a nuestros niños, por favor. Gracias. Es no a la 8.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to express ourselves. I'm totally against this. Please vote no. There's a long-term expense here. We'll never get our kids off of drugs. The majority of us here are against this. We just want to protect our children who are already influenced by drugs and addictions. Please protect our children. No on 8.
María Runquillo.
Buenas tardes. Vengo aquí representando a mi familia. Tengo ya más de 15 años viviendo aquí. Mi comunidad es tranquila. Yo pienso que deberían de invertir más y terminar las obras del Ford Park que están empezadas y ya tienen tiempo y no las han terminado, que estar invirtiendo en tiendas y siendo en contra de la juventud. Mejor ese parque inviértanle, por favor. Gracias.
Good afternoon. I'm here representing my family. I have lived here for over 15 years, and this is a tranquil community. I ask that you please finish the construction at Ford Park instead of investing in these businesses. Please support our youth. Thank you.
Angel Munoz. Angel Munoz. I'm going to continue to the next person, Carmen Hiramio.
Muy buenas tardes. Yo vengo a hablar sobre la proposición que tienen del número 8. Yo no estoy de acuerdo que aquí en Bell Gardens pongan esos lugares de venta de marihuana. ¿El por qué? Porque a mí me ha tocado estar viviendo ese grande problema con 2 de mis hijos. Y creo que nadie de los que quieren poner más tiendas aquí más cerca para la demás gente, me va a ir a ayudarles cuando están viviendo ese grande problema en casa, cuando está un caos terrible con personas que no puede estar viviendo uno con sus propios hijos, no puede estar viviendo uno con ellos por estar ellos drogados y estar viviendo esa situación. Es terrible. Por favor, les pedimos que pongan otro negocio diferente como para ayudar a las familias, al contrario, para que los jóvenes estudien más y para que salgan adelante, pero no algo que los va a destruir. Muchas gracias.
Yes, good afternoon. I came to speak about Proposition 8. I do not agree with this type of sales in Bell Gardens. Why? Because I've lived through this with 2 of my children. No one is going to go to their houses and help them when they're living through these problems and through this chaos because they're on drugs. Please put in a different type of business that helps families, that helps our youth to go to school. Not this proposition. Thank you.
Sylvia Barron.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Silvia Barrón. Tengo viviendo aquí desde 1985. Y vine a suplicarles por lo que más quieran que no tomen esa decisión de aquí de vender marihuana. La marihuana tal vez empieza muy bonito, ¿verdad? Para mucha gente, pero para muchos adolescentes les quita las ganas de vivir, les quita las ganas de estudiar, porque nomás quieren estar tragando y fumando marihuana. Entonces, imagínense ustedes, si son padres ustedes, por favor tengan conciencia de eso, ¿ok? La marihuana para mí es una puerta abierta para las demás drogas. Digo, hijo de la madre, aquí ya está bien jodido Bell Gardens con tanto pinche drogadicto. No necesitamos más. Necesitamos parar esto ya.
Let me remind you, please hold your applause so we can continue with the meeting.
Yes, good evening. My name is Silvia Baron. I've been living here since 1985, and I'm begging you, please do not decide to allow marijuana sales here. Maybe smoking marijuana starts out nicely, but then it takes away people's desire to live and to go to school, and they just want to be smoking all of the time. If you are parents, please consider that. It just opens the door to different drugs. And we'll be really screwed if we have all of these fucking drug addicts around here. We don't need more of that.
Maria Hernandez.
Sí, buenas tardes. Estoy aquí porque no estoy de acuerdo de que pongan esas tiendas de marihuana. Yo tengo mis hijos, tengo mis nietos y soy abuela de que tengo 3 niños que a causa de nietos que por a causa de eso, mis hijos perdieron a sus niños, pero afortunadamente yo pude rescatarlos. Yo los tengo y no se imaginan lo duro y lo difícil que es tener en su casa hijos así, con ese problema. Entonces no estoy de acuerdo de que pongan esas tiendas. Gracias.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm here because I do not agree with putting in the marijuana stores. I have kids, I have grandkids. I have 3 kids, and my kids lost their children. I rescued them. I have them with me. And you can't imagine how hard it is to have children in your home with those kinds of problems. Thank you.
Patricia Miranda.
Buenas tardes. Yo también vengo a suplicarles que no pongan esas tiendas de marihuana, que no sigan ayudando a nuestros jóvenes a que se destruyan. Por favor, no estoy de acuerdo. Hay mucha juventud que está destruyéndose por causa de las drogas. Gracias.
Good afternoon. I beg you to please not put in the marijuana stores. Our kids are destroying themselves, and I do not agree with this. And there are a lot of youth who are destroying themselves. Thank you.
Simón Estrada.
Buenas tardes. Yo tengo 33 años aquí en Bell Gardens y yo estoy tan desanimado con mis propios hijos. Tengo 2 en las drogas. Uno tiene 34 y el otro 32. Y luchando, me han pegado y todo, pero Dios me hizo fuerte y no me les dejé. Y no es justo que sigan dejando ustedes mismos, que sigan querer vender esto, que a sus propios hijos nos van a querer matar a nosotros. Niñitos pequeñitos, ¿qué están haciendo? Mataron a una maestra de 8 o 9 años, al lugar de ponernos a orar, estar leyendo la Biblia o ayudarles. Vamos a venderles droga, no es justo. Y yo no me la acabo con mis hijos. Tengo 2 en las drogas grandes, me han pegado y los tengo en rehabilitación. Y aquí estoy fuerte, gracias a Dios. Y pues no vender eso, que pongan, que metan a todos los que son homeless a hacer un trabajo.
Gracias.
Good afternoon. I've been living here for 33 years in Bell Gardens, and I'm very disappointed with my children. I have a 34 and a 32-year-old and doing drugs. They have hit me. It's not fair for you to allow these sales. Our kids will want to kill us. We have an 8 or 9-year-old killing a teacher. They should be reading the Bible instead. I have 2 kids who have done drugs. They're in rehab. They've even hit me, but I'm strong. Thank God. Thank you.
Marta Carrasco.
Buenas tardes. Yo no sé si yo los conozco a ustedes de bastante tiempo y no entiendo la razón por la cual la han cambiado ahora, de que no, estoy muy fuera de onda de que antes estaban en contra de eso. No sé si es verdad, si es mentira, discúlpenme si estoy mal, pero nosotros, yo soy capitana de Neighborhood Watch, hemos trabajado arduamente para mantener esta ciudad fuera del crimen, muchos años de trabajo y ahora espero que no sea eso. Acuérdense que hace como 5 años o 4 alguien trató de traer otro negocio y el Neighborhood Watch se levantó, nos levantamos todo Neighborhood Watch y venimos aquí a decirle no a las drogas. Y esa vez se nos respetó y espero que esta ocasión, y no sé, gracias, nos respeten.
Good afternoon. I don't know if, well, I've known you for a long time and I don't understand the reason why you've changed. I'm very taken aback. Before you were against this, I was the captain of the Neighborhood Watch and we've worked very hard to avoid having crime and we've put in many years of work. And 4 or 5 years ago, someone tried bringing one of these businesses here and the Neighborhood Watch was opposed to it. So we're here to say no and we're asking you to please respect that opinion. Thank you.
Arcesión López.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Ascensión López y prácticamente yo estoy de acuerdo con todos los compañeros que han expresado su interés por que no se apruebe esta instalación de dispensarios de marihuana. También quiero recordarles a todos ustedes como concejales y que su principal desempeño de trabajo es velar por los intereses de la comunidad. Y creo que eso deben de considerarlo muy profundamente a conciencia de hacer decisiones correctas para el beneficio de la comunidad. Algunos se han expresado de que en la familia existen problemas de ese calibre. No queremos aumentar una situación así, sino que cooperar con la comunidad para poder mejorarla en todos los niveles educativos y familiares y para que sea una sociedad más mejor. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Ascensión Lopez. I agree almost totally with all of those who have shared their opinions. We do not approve of the dispensaries. And I'd like to remind you that your main duty is looking after the community's interests. And I hope that you will think long and hard about this to make the correct decision. We have seen this type of problems within families and we don't want an increase in that. We want to improve our community and its education, etc. Thank you.
Marisela Durasco.
I'm back again because I have only 1 minute. Okay. We trust on you guys. We vote on you guys. So majority of the people, they were saying no. I hope you take this in consideration and support us and think about like my example. Sometimes in my backyard with my 2 grandkids and they're smelling weed. Weed is allowed in a residency, but sometimes they don't even respect that. They're smoking outside. So we are second hand smokers. So sometimes I have to yell at them, go and smoke over there. And my mom like, you're crazy, ma. No, but I don't want my grandkids to smell that. So they don't respect that. If they see dispensaries, do you think they're going to respect that? Do you think 17 years old is going to respect that? Think about it. We are on your hands. We vote for you guys. Please.
María Odila.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Olide. Yo estoy aquí, también no estoy de acuerdo en que se abran esos dispensarios. Mi hijo, yo estoy alta, mi hijo está más alto y más fornido. Ojalá lo vieran cuando él está en drogas. Es bien feo porque uno no los puede controlar, están fuera de sí. Y eso es bien triste que yo he votado por ustedes, por él, que su papá me dijo, Jorge, por él, su papá, vote por mi hijo. Oh, sí, están jóvenes, uno quiere la ciudad mejor. Uno vota por ustedes para que nos apoyen en todo. Mis hijos crecieron en el 87, 88, no a las drogas. Ahorita van a traer eso aquí. No se me hace justo, es bien triste que uno pierde a sus hijos en drogas porque manejan no son ellos en ese momento que están drogados. Ojalá que puedan pensar en sus hijos en un futuro, a lo mejor tienen, a lo mejor no, pero deben que pensar también en ustedes, porque eso nos afecta a todos los que vivimos aquí. Es bien triste. No, el dinero que les den no les va a traer a sus hijos para atrás.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Olide, and I do not agree with opening up the dispensaries. My son is taller and bigger than me, and you should have seen him when he was caught up in drugs. It was really ugly because one can't control themselves. They're not themselves. And I voted for Jorge. His dad told me vote for Jorge because he's young. My kids were born in 87 and 88. And this is not fair. It's very sad that one would lose their kids because they're not themselves. Think of the future. If you have kids of your own, please think of their future. This affects us all, and it's very sad. And money won't bring us back a life. Thank you.
Jennifer Rodriguez.
Quiero felicitar a la comunidad que ha respondido a este llamado. Gracias a ustedes, creo que al hacer sus opiniones conocidas es que están aquí para oponerse a algo que sí va a afectar a nuestra comunidad. Esto no es una sorpresa para mí. Esto se viene planeando hace ya 2 años y medio. Yo advertí a la comunidad y se iba a empezar una medida en una boleta recogiendo firmas donde yo estaba exigiendo y pidiendo que ustedes como comunidad decidieran a través de su voto si ustedes querían esto o no, y se les negó ese derecho. Ahora ellos, 2 años y medio después de que yo advertí a la comunidad, están haciendo
You're supposed to
lo que
address
yo
the
les dije que
council,
iban a
not
hacer.
the audience.
Entonces, comunidad, ustedes también son your audience and your residents and your council. So I can speak in whichever way I want, this way or that direction. Anyways, community, thank you for coming.
I want to congratulate the community for responding to this call and for making their opinions known to oppose something. This is not a surprise to me. This has been being planned for 2.5 years now. I was asking for signatures for you to be able to vote whether you wanted this or not, and you were denied that right.
Manuel Parra.
Mi nombre es Manuel Parra, soy residente de Belgardes por más de 40 años. Con todo respeto les pido no a la proposición 8, no queremos más drogas allá en esta ciudad. Ya está peligroso ir a caminar al parque de los veteranos. Conozco varios compañeros que han caminado conmigo que ya no van por miedo a ir ahí, de tanto peligro que hay. En los carros pasa ahí, huele todo marihuana. Ya tenemos suficiente con lo que hay ahorita, no queremos más drogas en nuestra ciudad. Por favor les pido, no más drogas en la ciudad de Bell Gardens.
My name is Manuel Parra. I have been a resident for over 40 years. I respectfully ask you to please say no to 8. We don't want more drugs. It's already dangerous to walk in the community. I have friends who are scared of walking in the community. It smells of drugs. We don't want more drugs in Bell Garden.
City Clerk, can we move on to the Zoom comments?
Yes, thank you. And before I did want to announce that we did receive written comments. We received 20 in support of item number 8 and 1 in opposition of item number 8. And with that, Zoom or caller with the last 3 numbers, 847, if you would please select *6 to unmute yourself or the microphone icon on your device. You may proceed to speak.
All right. Thank you for having me. I've been a resident here for 19 years. My name is Mel Alaman. Look, These are the two main issues in this conversation regarding the dispensaries. Number one, Bell Gardens is a high-risk city, and you need to accept that. We're not Huntington Beach. We're not Santa Monica, where perhaps the dispensaries work, or perhaps the social and economic status of those cities allow for the recreational use of cannabis. You're listening to folks talk to you all from a place of pain. This situation is what plagues first American-born generation. This is a working-class neighborhood, immigrant families. It doesn't work here. The second thing is financially, it doesn't work. It failed in Colorado. It failed in LA. Nobody got out of debt the way that they were supposed to, via cannabis.
15 seconds
The trend
left.
with this, sure thing, thank you. The trend with the city council is to take up progressive causes. I appreciate it. There's a time and place for that. 2023 is not it. Fix our parks instead, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoom ID, Belly and Sudra Garcia, if you would please select. Thank you. You may proceed with your comment. You have 1 minute. If you can please announce your name for the record.
Buenas tardes, soy Sandra García, residente de Bell Gardens por más de 50 años, toda mi vida. Y ya dejen de perder el tiempo con la marihuana y pongan atención y hagan su trabajo en apoyar y protección de las trailitas y a nuestra comunidad. No a la 8. El respeto en la ciudad se ha perdido a causa de las drogas y las pandillas, no más. Y no queremos que hagan accidentes con la gente que fuma. La juventud es nuestro futuro. Que vayan a otras ciudades, pero aquí en nuestras comunidades ya no. Ya hay suficientes zombies y homeless en nuestras comunidades. En vez de enfocarse en bajar el costo de actividades y deportes, y pongan la alberca. Las dispensarias causarán caos y los hacen lentos y más huevones y andan en destrucciones. No está bien que acepten las drogas aquí. Una dispensaria sería mal.
Ya su tiempo se terminó. Gracias. Zoom ID, Guadalupe
my name is-
Moreno, if you would please select the microphone icon on your Zoom.
Sí, buenas tardes. ¿Sí me escuchan?
Sí.
Mi nombre es María Guadalupe y yo no estoy de acuerdo en que pongan los dispensarios. ¿Por qué? Porque he tenido una experiencia que tenía mis hijos de la escuela y estaba un muchacho de 17 años bien drogado. Mis hijos temblaban al verlo. Preocupémonos más por ver a nuestros hijos. Si así tenemos que andar detrás de ellos para cuidarlos, porque ha habido violaciones, ha habido secuestros. Hay muchos niños que están entrando en drogas y preocupémonos por ellos, porque ellos son el mañana, son el futuro. Y sería mejor que se preocuparan por tener más actividades y educar a nuestros hijos. Gracias.
Gracias. Zoom ID, Doris Serrano, if you would please select the microphone icon to unmute your Zoom.
Sí, gracias. Mi nombre es Doris Serrano y vuelvo de nuevo. Estoy aquí para darles un rotundo no a esa proposición número 8. Quiero decirles que hace casi ya 20 años que nosotros nos movimos para Bell Gardens huyendo de la violencia y huyendo de las pandillas y de las drogas, ¿verdad? Con nuestros hijos aún pequeños. Puedo decir que estoy muy agradecida porque esta ciudad nos brindó esta hospitalización, ¿verdad? Para nuestros hijos, ¿verdad? Perdón, y hoy tengo, gracias a Dios, 4 hijos que ya son profesionales, pero me falta uno de 14 años a quien un día fue víctima de acoso y también fue víctima de que le ofrecieron droga a la salida de la escuela. Saben que no queremos que eso suceda más en esta ciudad. Nosotros amamos a Bell Gardens y vamos a luchar hasta lo último. Les hacemos responsable a cada uno de ustedes que emitan un voto para esto. Dejen un legado realmente de valores familiares.
Gracias. Zoom ID Arturo Beltran Leyva. Please select the microphone icon to unmute. Zoom ID Arturo. Oh, if you would please select the microphone icon or the unmute button on Zoom.
Yo, I was just funny little dumb, like, yeah, these people don't know that I'm gonna go buy my weed somewhere else. Like the weed they're talking about is because there's a black market because there's no dispensaries. That's why their kids are getting all this weed. That's not weed. So I don't know what's wrong with you guys. And there's Miss Jennifer Rodriguez. If we remember, she's the one that's bringing real drugs to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoom ID Aram Ekimayan, if you would please select the microphone icon.
Hello, City Council. I just want to say that by allowing cannabis sales, Bell Gardens can generate new sources of revenue, which we saw during the COVID era. A lot of cities lacked when they had shortages in their budget. They can use this to fund important public services and infrastructure projects. In only 2020, during the COVID era, California collected over $1 billion in tax revenue from legal cannabis sales. And a lot of that money went to local municipalities and was used. More importantly, in an area like Bell Garden, I would say that the black market is readily apparent, as the gentleman said earlier about that cell phone store. We want to make
15
sure
seconds left.
Thank you. We want to make sure that cannabis sales are regulated and safe, and the legal California cannabis market just does just that. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Zoom ID Terry, if you would please select the microphone icon or the unmute feature on Zoom. Zoom ID TERE, Tere, if you would please select the microphone icon on your device or select unmute. Last three digits, 857. If you would please select unmute or *6 from your phone to proceed with your comment. Zoom ID with the last three numbers, 857. If you would please select *6 or unmute. Okay, Mayor and members of the council, that was all that we were able to retrieve from the virtual. And I already announced the written comments and all the public comment cards that were submitted earlier. That period has closed. We did receive a couple more cards after, but we have already closed that period.
Thank you, City Clerk. If there's no objection by the members, I will close public participation at this time. City Manager, will you please give your report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd just like to mention a few things. We still have our Friday Farmers Market for the residents that are here. If you don't know about it, come by Veterans Park from 11 to 3. On Saturday, May 13th at 10:30. So this is this Saturday coming up at Veterans Park. We have another financial literacy workshop. So this one is for establishing or repairing credit. So if you can stop by, they do have snacks, light refreshments, and even some drawings. So there's incentive to go as well, in addition to the good information. Also want to mention this weekend starting on Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Ford Park. The Lions Club is holding their 62nd community fair, and it's at Ford Park this year. I believe in the past years it may have been at Veterans Park. And the last item I want to mention is on Saturday, May 20th, It's our annual curbside cleanup for bulky items. So if you have mattresses, appliances, extra trash, things that aren't hazardous material, is if you put them out on the street by 6 a.m., they will get picked up. One final item regarding the Lions Club, as the council asked a couple weeks ago regarding the parking lot at Ford Park. So the western end of the parking lot that's been under construction lately will be open this week in advance of the Lions Club community fair. That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. We will now move to the consent calendar. Does any member of the council, successor agency wish to pull an item for separate discussion? If there are no further questions, I will now call for a motion to approve item number 1 through 6 for the consent calendar.
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Barcena and a second by Pulido. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you. Council and successor agency member Barcena,
Yes.
Council member Chavez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Sanchez.
Yes.
And the mayor and Chair Cortez, she's been excused absent.
City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 7?
Thanks again, Mayor Pro Tem. This next item, staff is seeking direction and from the council to create and host a resident art and yard sale pilot program in concurrence with the weekly farmers market. With that, I'll turn it over to Liz Nava, our Recreation Community Services Director.
Thank you, Mr. O'Kelly. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. Just give me 1 second while we get the report up here on the screen. Where am I pointing? Okay. Okay. This is just a brief report this evening regarding a pilot project for a resident art and yard sale. Staff were made aware of a need from the community for residents to have an opportunity and a space for those who are unable to sell their home items, their personal items, and their art at a venue like a yard sale. And so as a means of meeting this need, staff are considering starting a pilot project for residents to sell their art or their used home goods and personal property. The idea would be to host it adjacent to the farmers market at Veterans Park and kind of use that audience that we have built in to springboard this project off and to get it started. And as Mike had mentioned earlier, the farmers market meets on Fridays from 11 to about 3:30. Just to give you a little bit of background and some details about the program, the purpose would be, again, to assist the residents sell their art. Some residents don't have a yard and aren't able to host a yard sale. Some residents might live in an area that doesn't have high traffic and so don't quite get the exposure that other residents get. So this program would be for residents only. It would be free of charge. And there would be an application process implemented for those who are interested. And we would reserve spots on a first come, first served basis. And if council does approve this, we would implement guidelines to ensure that residents are selling and keeping to the spirit of what this program is, which is not to resale large bulk items that have been purchased, but homemade items, home goods, and personal property like you would see at a traditional yard sale. So really, this project will help us to better understand what the needs are of the residents. And as a pilot project, we can assess the effectiveness of this project and make adjustments as is needed. And we hope that we're able to meet the needs of the community in selling their personal items and their personal art. And we recommend that City Council by motion provide staff direction to host a resident art and yard sale pilot program. And that's my entire report, very short and sweet. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you for bringing this item. About how many people are you looking to sign up for the program?
I think as a start, maybe we can host about 10, depending on the response that we get. So once council gives direction, we can start developing the guidelines and the application, and then we can market the program to the residents. So depending on the feedback that we get from that and the response that we get, we can determine. But I think if we start with about 10, and it will be not a part of the farmer's market, but alongside the farmer's market. So there's that draw already that's going to be there. Hopefully we can start there as a good number.
Thank you. One more question. I know that the farmer's market already sells produce and some food and things like that. I imagine those would not be included in the resident section of it, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Once you get into selling food items, then you start working with or having to deal with the Department of Public Health and getting permits. And we're really trying to avoid those things and make it simple for the residents to sell their, as anyone would in a typical yard sale. So if there's personal property, clothing that they'd like to sell, some people are creative and make arts and crafts that you wouldn't have to go through the business license and permitting. You know, this would just be an opportunity for them to come out and share with the community and sell to the community.
Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? May I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move to approve.
I'll second.
Staff recommendation. Yes.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Barcena and a second by Chavez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez is excused absent.
City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 8?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Pro Tem. This item is to inform the council of the framework for establishing legal regulated commercial cannabis in Bell Gardens and to seek further direction from the council. As you know, staff has performed a detailed multi-page staff report. It's included in the agenda. It's been posted online. Our Community Development Director, Gus Romo, will provide a presentation today that includes the components of a sample retail cannabis ordinance that was also included as part of the agenda and staff report, along with background and other information. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gus for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, council, staff, and residents of the community and business owners. I'd like to go ahead and ask somebody to turn the slide as we go through that, as I indicate. And I apologize for not being able to be there this evening, just dealing with some stomach issues. So wanted to let you know that staff has received direction to go ahead and look at cannabis commercial activity in the city and determine what other cities have been doing and what options have been presented with other cities, and do some research to bring to you a draft ordinance for consideration. So the recommendation to the city council is to either direct staff to prepare an ordinance authorizing and regulating commercial cannabis within the city, or take no further action and receive and file this report. So just to give you a little bit of background, and I want to let you know that our city attorney had helped us also with the research here, looking at the background, which started back in 1996 when the state, through Proposition 215, approved the Compassionate Use Act, which was meant for medical marijuana use. And then in 2015, that's when the state enacted the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, which considered 3 separate bills and also introduced adult use of marijuana in 2016 through Prop 64. So after the governor took an additional action, he changed the wording from marijuana to cannabis. Next slide, please. So city laws and regulations, as we know, must not conflict with state law. The state law does allow for both medicinal and adult recreational use of marijuana, even though, like the other gentleman was saying earlier, the federal law does not. But the federal law has allowed states to go forward with their own approvals. So state law, again, can't be duplicative, or what conflict, I should say, arises when the law is duplicative or contradicts or regulates an area that's already occupied by state law. Next slide, please. So the way cities regulate cannabis is through their zoning code. Zoning code addresses the land use impacts associated with not just cannabis uses, but all sorts of uses. Oftentimes this is done through what's called a conditional use permit. Conditional use permit also regulates alcohol uses, for examples. And then the business permitting requirements have to do with a business license being issued by the city once the land use is approved. So they impose the industry standards. And of course, we're looking at cannabis as being identified as to what the state law allows. Next slide, please. Cities can impose taxes to receive revenue, and it's often based on the gross receipts of the business. Now, staff went ahead and, as part of its research, looked at what other cities were bringing in terms of that revenue. And we saw that one Southeast LA city predicted initially to take in $250,000 to $450,000 per location annually, and they well exceeded that prediction. So we also gave some revenue generation predictions, not just from that one city, but looking at the entire state. Next slide, please. The revenue can also come in through development agreements, which allow cities to receive community benefits in return for assurances that their land use approvals will remain vested. And these development agreements can be given a certain date to expire, as some cities have done 10-year agreements, 15-year agreements, etc. But they can also be optional. They can allow the use itself to be permitted through a conditional use permit, as I stated, or to be permitted through a development agreement. It's negotiated on a case-by-case basis when it comes to a development agreement. Next slide, please. So in looking at the State Department of Cannabis Control, which regulates cannabis, right now they have a $20 million grant available to implement systems for cannabis activity. And this is one reason the city staff started to look at this, because the state is granting money for cities that are allowing cannabis uses. And the applicants that propose to use existing constructs and permitting systems, such as our CUP process or development agreement, are awarded preferential points. And what the state awards for phase one right now is a total of $10 million. We're expecting them to announce this in June of this year. And if awarded, the city council will need to formally accept the grant funding. The application itself has already been submitted by city staff in anticipation that if you do decide to go for an ordinance, we would qualify for that grant. Of course, if you decide not to adopt or create an ordinance, then that application would become null and void. Next slide, please. So currently, there are 23 cities that permit some sort of cannabis activity, retail activity in LA County, and 20 permit retail sales of cannabis. When you look at all of the different type of uses that can be allowed, retail is just one of those uses. You also have the uses that you don't see right up front. In other words, separate from the retail dispensaries, you've got cannabis cultivation. You also have cannabis manufacturing and cannabis transportation. So when you look at these type of businesses, those usually people are not aware of because they happen within the industrial areas. So retail sales of cannabis represents the final product of the cannabis industries. Therefore, you don't see, again, the manufacturing, the cultivation, unless it's not mitigated properly and all of a sudden you start getting smells and other impacts. But again, those uses would be regulated through a conditional use permit process and a development agreement. So cannabis retailers are visible to the public and create the most known controversy. And what you hear today with the residents of the community is just that, them seeing cannabis related uses along their streets. And again, that's what you find with most communities. There are some communities that are saying we will only do the wholesale uses and not the retail. And yet there are others that are saying, well, we will only do the retail and not the wholesale. But there's a combination that you can do as well. What staff is providing here tonight is options for you to consider. There's also cannabis testing, which one thing that we understand, the difference between the unpermitted cannabis and the permitted cannabis is that the permitted cannabis has to go through regulation. They have to be tested. So less chances that something is going to produce a bad product. So again, anytime you regulate something, you've got the labs involved in the testing of that cannabis to make sure that they're accredited and that cannabis product is not harmful to the community. Next slide, please. So how could the city potentially regulate cannabis activities? We've provided a sample ordinance. It's a draft. And again, this ordinance can be changed. It's identifying retail uses because that's simply, well, I should say that is the simpler way to do it. Next slide. So when you look at the land use controls, we identify what the state allows. So the state, when they look at the distance criteria, it provides a 600-foot distance from schools. The city can be more restrictive. They can impose additional sensitive uses, such as daycare centers, youth centers, and parks. There can also be a 250-foot distance between similar cannabis uses. In this case, if we're talking about retail uses, a 250-foot requirement within or between those uses. And again, that's an option that you have in your ordinance. Right now, the ordinance, the draft also says that cannabis uses are prohibited in the Civic Center Overlay District. That's the area that our City Hall is located, fire station, police department, that goes on Garfield Avenue all the way to Gage Avenue. We also have design and development standards for commercial businesses. We could either mirror those standards with an existing ordinance and just point back to the code, or we can come up with additional standards for cannabis related uses, such as providing decorative railings, grills, and so forth. In other words, affecting the appearance of the dispensary up front. And here's what I was talking about with the conditional use permit, where that permit has to be approved by the Planning Commission. And if appealed, it goes on to the City Council for action. There's specific findings that have to be included for compatibility with the surrounding community. And there's a limited lifespan too. So a conditional use permit can be, in other words, an expiration date can be placed on that, and conditions can be imposed to prevent odors, to prevent traffic, or to mitigate these things. Next slide, please. This zoning map that was put together by our staff identifies in green the areas that could potentially be allowed for cannabis operations. And we identified this pursuant to the California state guidelines. In other words, the distance requirements from schools. So what you see here is potentially the areas where cannabis uses can be allowed if the city decided to approve an ordinance for retail dispensaries. Next slide, please. So the draft ordinance was put together again, looking at samples of nearby cities and also identifying state regulations. So when looking at this ordinance, we would look at adequate security and lighting, including security guards and a schedule for those guards, odor mitigation to ensure that there isn't a smell out there, that there's exhaust equipment and ventilation equipment for the cannabis, whether it's a retail dispensary or a manufacturing facility. The ordinance would also prohibit on-site consumption. and require compliance with all state laws and regulations as conditions of approval associated with a conditional use permit. And it would also require a business to open within 1 year of issuance of a permit. Next slide, please. So staff tonight is asking whether you want to direct us to prepare an ordinance authorizing the city to regulate commercial cannabis activities, or again, to take no further action and receive and file this report. And again, what I'd like to point out is one of the reasons why so many cities are doing this is because of the revenue incentive, but also because it's coming down to the point where the cities that don't do it might miss the boat in terms of getting into that revenue. It might come to the point where some of these uses are going to become permitted by right at some point in the future, perhaps. We don't know. Again, that's just a speculation. But now we've got about 44% of cities throughout the state that are participating in this. And again, we feel that more and more, as more time comes through, or as more time passes, I should say, that more and more cities are going to allow some type of cannabis use. And that concludes my report. We also have our Assistant City Attorney, Susie Altamirano, here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments? I'm hearing none. May I have a motion?
Actually, I do have a question. What did you say? I don't know if this was covered in the presentation, but city manager, what is the revenue that this potential business would create for the city of Bell Gardens?
Sure, Councilmember Barcena. So there's varying numbers. I think the example that we showed on the presentation was about $250,000 to $450,000 per year from each retail site. So you could multiply that by, however many sites would actually apply for a license and go through that process and receive a license. So I think in other cities our size, I think the numbers have been in the, anywhere from the $1 to $3 million range per year.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from members of the council?
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions directed towards staff. And I appreciate the presentation on this topic. I know we touched on different methods of cannabis in cities. You mentioned that there was 5. Obviously, I'm assuming storefronts is 1, right? The second one is cultivation. Third one is manufacturing. Fourth one is transportation. Which one was the 5th one?
The testing facilities, the labs.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm curious to know, out of all of these, in terms of revenue, how does each of them differentiate in terms of what the city can do per se, right? For example, if we have manufacturing, transportation, and cultivation compared to as a storefront, right? How much does the revenue differentiate amongst each of these different sectors?
Councilmember Chavez, Paloma Perez McAvoy with City Attorney's Office. I'm happy to answer that question. I apologize, I didn't mean to shock you there. It really varies depending on what municipality you're in, and again, the variety of businesses you're allowed. I will say that historically, it's been shown that retail sales do tend to generate more income for cities than other uses. And a lot of that is really based on the policies that your council implements. For example, there was some discussion earlier about development agreements. The sample draft ordinance that's before you right now has a very limited lifespan to the conditional use permit that would be associated with any land use approval for a cannabis retail use. It would only be 18 months, so to speak, from the time that a business pulls those building permits. If a retailer wanted to extend the life of those approvals, he or she would need to request a development agreement. And the development agreement is really to the benefit of the retailer because it allows them to get some vested property rights. So they may say, city, we'd like a development agreement for a term of 5-10 years. And in exchange, the city would be able to negotiate public benefits in return. This is a little different, a little bit of a different animal than when you guys typically deal with, say, for example, conditions of approval, which have very strict parameters on exactly what exactions a city can make. There needs to be a reasonable relationship, and it needs to be somewhat proportional to the void you're essentially filling. Because the developer is asking for a development permit, or sorry, development agreement, and asking for extraordinary benefits, the city is also in a position to ask for extraordinary benefits as well. Another tool that's been very widely used by other municipalities is the imposition of a sales tax. However, that does require being put on the ballot, and is something that your council may want to consider for some time in the future as it relates to these uses.
Thank you so much for that. Another question in regards to the restrictions that I know we mentioned we mentioned general broad region, CELA, at some of our neighboring cities, but I know we talked about the distance, the state requirement distance. Do we know any of examples that local neighboring cities have put in terms of restrictions? You know, so how much different was it from the state regulation?
Sure. So the sample ordinance you have before you is consistent with the state law default in terms of distances from daycare centers, youth centers, and schools. However, the sample ordinance before you also adds parks. The council, it has the ability to increase this to a bigger radii or even decrease it actually. So they could remove it altogether as a policy decision if the council so wished to do. It really depends on the city. We did look at quite a few cities that were smaller in size, similar to Bell Gardens, you know, anywhere between 2 and 4 square miles, because that does impact your land use and zoning practices quite a lot. I will say that one thing that is added to your ordinance that is within the council's police power, but not necessarily a requirement of state law, is this citing requirement of a 250 foot distance between these retailers. So let's just take City Hall, for example. Let's just say a retailer set up here because they have the requisite zoning, and assuming they're at least 600 feet away from the sensitive uses we just mentioned. If a cannabis retail shop were to be approved right here, by virtue of approving that shop right here, there would not be any cannabis retailers 250 feet of either side. So that greatly reduces sort of the realm in which these facilities may be approved. I also want to point out, because I know that this is always kind of a question that comes up, a limitation on the number of permits that are issued, or even the imposition of a lottery system. We looked at that. Many municipalities have faced a lot of issues in terms of RFPs and lotteries. And so what's been placed before you is essentially using the regulatory infrastructure that the council or the city already has. What's important to note is that when these uses are up for consideration by the Planning Commission, there is a finding that has to be made that these uses are compatible with the context of the surrounding community in which they're in. So there may be something about a particular neighborhood or a particular site that perhaps we didn't necessarily specifically contemplate in this particular ordinance, but there may be some sort of extenuating circumstances in which the city may decide, for whatever reasons, looking at the context of the neighborhood for the public safety and welfare, we cannot make this requisite finding. So there are some controls, and I just want to make that clear as well. Everything that we've done here, we've really tried to integrate it within the existing regulatory system that you already have, which does prove to be in practice easier or better and easier to navigate for applicants, as well as those acting on behalf of the city, trying to process these applications and enforce compliance once these operations are up and moving. When you start separating them and kind of creating this whole other system for them, that's where things get lost. Nobody's really sure who's in charge of what or what standards might apply. So this draft ordinance was just very careful to try to implement, integrate everything in within the systems that you have already. And one more comment, if I may. There was some discussion about the specific design standards and development standards that would that could potentially apply specifically to any type of use relating to cannabis retailers or cannabis activities, in particular as it relates to cannabis retail use. Again, we modeled the zoning code, which outlines a number of conditional uses and special uses. And so we added it to that list and added a few more design and development standards in terms of the siting, the prohibition in the civic center overlay district, as well as additional application requirements, letting the city know, proposing letting the city know of any sensitive uses within a 1,500-foot radius, as well as design standards related to transparency requirements for the retail storefronts as well.
Thank you so much for that. A lot of that is it's super, super important for our community to really understand and comprehend, because I think that there's a lot of false dialogue, right, in terms of what's actually being done today. And it's been very tough for me, myself, to sit up here, as I could assume as well from my council, to be hearing these sort of messages being said, right? Because at the end of the day, we want what's best for our community. Right. I have a couple of more questions, and I think they're important to be asked, because it's almost inevitable for our community to kind of not take this or think about this if that's possible, if it does happen. How are these businesses regulated, right? Is it the city that goes in? Is it the police that goes in? What sort of power does the city have in terms of knocking, or not even knocking, and saying, hey, we're going to do an inspection today. We want to know what's going on, right? Because it could be that in a case we move forward with this, we get a complaint from our community and they say, hey, I saw a minor going into this place. Obviously you have to be 21 to get in. There's obviously a security guard. In that case, who is in charge of regulating, or what sort of restrictions does the city have in terms of going in, inspecting, and seeing what's actually happening?
That's a great question, Councilman. There are this is a very, as you know, very highly regulated field, regulated both the state and the local level. I like to think of it as akin somewhat to alcohol sales, where you have a state licensing board, and then you also have the municipalities or the local governments regulating it at a local level. So in terms of state regulation, typically businesses will go and they'll approach DCC, the Department of Cannabis Control, which is the state body that regulates these activities for the most part. You also have some other bodies regulating taxes and whatnot, but in terms of issuing licenses, that's under the realm of the Department of Cannabis Control. Simultaneously, businesses also work to get local approvals. In terms of what happens at the local level, that's really up to each city how they want to enforce these laws, of course, keeping within the confines of the Constitution and due process and those types of considerations. And again, also making sure that we're not conflicting with any state laws. This sample ordinance does contain some language in terms of requiring that businesses be in compliance with both state law and related regulations. That is, if your council were to direct staff to draft a sample ordinance, we would recommend implementing such language. Other avenues in which we can enforce compliance, or a city can enforce compliance, would be the business permit regulations. Similarly, what this draft ordinance has, much like billiard rooms or other adult related businesses, an applicant would have to come in, pull a business permit, and also be subject to certain operating standards. There was some discussion today about the requirement for security, to not permit on-site consumption of cannabis and cannabis products and whatnot. In terms of the CUP, the conditional use permit, assuming there's no development agreement, there are some mechanisms in your code that allow for the revocation of a CUP in the event that an operator is not complying with the conditions of approval associated with the CUP. Similarly, if an applicant was to execute a development agreement with the city, that development agreement would include procedures in which the city would have to notify a business if they were not compliant with the law. There's also state law requirements that require the city to review compliance with development agreements on a yearly basis, and typically provide some sort of mechanism to terminate terminate an agreement in the event that the operator is not, defaults on the promises made, does not cure, and the city decides that this is no longer a relationship that they wish to continue with. So it's a very complicated way of saying pretty much everybody's in charge. And I will say that in working with other jurisdictions in the Southern California region, what we found is very, very helpful is departments working with each other and just informing other departments. I conducted a site, building official, I conducted a site inspection. I found these code violations, and perhaps letting somebody in the planning or community development department know that these are happening, and then somebody taking a look at those CUPs. Are they out of compliance with those CUPs? Are they subject to revocation? There are a number of different avenues that can be taken.
Thank you so much for that.
Are there any other questions or comments from the council?
What sensitive areas would not, what sensitive areas would establishments of this, of these establishments would not be allowed, or what distance would we be considering?
Currently, the sample ordinance proposes a 600-foot distancing requirement from schools, daycare centers, and youth centers and parks. The use would only be conditionally permitted in commercial or industrial zoned properties. And if I don't know if it's possible to pull up that slide from the previous presentation, it's somewhat demonstrative or illustrative of what the entire realm could be under this particular ordinance, if it were adopted as you see it today. One more. There we go. So what you see before you on this map right here is essentially all of the industrial and commercially zoned properties within the city of Bell Gardens, excluding the Civic Center overlay zone, and also providing a roughly 600-foot boundary from those sensitive uses that we described. As I mentioned earlier, in the event that you plop down one of these uses at any of these sites under this proposed ordinance, that would immediately eliminate another shop opening up within 250 feet of that approved retail shop. So just imagine if you were just to plop it down, all of a sudden there would be another radii emanating from that shop saying, okay, we've decided there's one shop here by virtue of this ordinance. There will be no other cannabis retail shops within 250 feet of this particular spot.
And this was determined based on California requirements, right?
The second 250-foot requirement is not something that is required by the state. This is just an example of how cities can exert their land use controls in order to regulate this industry.
Got it. Thank you.
I wonder, council member, if Paloma could expound on the CUP part of it. So the 250-foot separation between potential retail sites, could be further restricted just depending on conditions of the CUP. So Paloma, if you could maybe just mention some of the conditions that would potentially be considered that might prohibit two retail sites that are even 400 feet apart from each other.
Correct. Yes. Thank you, City Manager. As Mr. O'Kelly was inferring, I discussed a little bit about those findings that are required in the CUP process. So if, for example, you had a cannabis retail spot that had been approved and was operating, and another project applicant suggested a spot 400 feet away, it is up to the city's discretion in terms of making the findings if they had some reason, as I mentioned earlier, that perhaps had not been contemplated. There's some sensitive reason why the city may not want to permit that second use. There's a finding that requires that the use is compatible with the existing context of the surrounding neighborhood, and would not disrupt the public safety and welfare of the surrounding community. If the planning commission were to feel differently, it is up to the planning commission's discretion, and I believe subject to appeal to the city council, to deny a CUP on the basis that that finding cannot be made. But that is well within the city's discretionary land use powers. Does that, I'm feeling like I'm not answering your question, so feel free to follow up if you have another one. Thank you.
And I just wanted for Paloma, and I think for the council, just to make sure that it's understood that the 250-foot number, could also become a bigger number if certain findings were made as part of the CUP process. So, we've identified that as a potential starting point. You see on the map there, but it could be further refined on a case-by-case basis as applications came in.
I want to go ahead and shift this a little bit over to the reason why it's here. I think regulation is sort of a big keyword here. I think our residents, I want them to know that I'm listening to you guys. I know that a big concern is the lack of regulation, meaning the shops that we have seen pop up all illegally, because shops are not legal in the city of Bell Gardens. So every time you hear about a shop in Bell Gardens, it's illegal. That means that there is a problem with regulation. That means that we need to do something about it. So my question in this case is there a benefit to regulating this? And I kind of want to divert that over to the city manager or even the chief. I know that there have been issues. Is there a reason why we cannot regulate those illegal shops currently? And would this help at all? Is this a step in the right direction to make sure that there aren't any illegal, non-regulated cannabis shops in our city?
I'll start and then I'll turn it over to the chief, Councilmember Barcena. So I think from the starting point, I think there are many examples where regulated businesses have, I'll use the term, have choked out the illegal businesses. So I'll use alcohol sales, for example. In the United States, when there was prohibition, alcohol sales was not allowed. There were still alcohol sales going on. They were illegal. It was underground. There were speakeasies, things of that nature. When you have an industry that is regulated, where there are age limits, there are multiple layers of enforcement going on from the federal government, state, regional, local. I think generally speaking, it can choke out the illegal businesses. There's not a need. If somebody needs or wants marijuana for medicinal or recreational purposes, currently, if they want to stay within the city of Bell Gardens and purchase what is a legal substance, they have to leave the city of Bell Gardens or purchase it illegally if they have some kind of a contact. So I think anecdotally and generally speaking, a regulated business is expected to help really eliminate the need for an illegal business because you can buy it legally. With that, though, I'll turn over to the chief to discuss the challenges that go on currently without a retail cannabis ordinance that currently exist for the illegal cannabis businesses.
Well, as far as the illegal ones that have been operating or the one that was just shut down, we struggle to get filings and cooperation on filings on the illegal ones. So I'll leave that up to your imagination on how easy it's going to be to get filings or to move forward against these other legal dispensaries. I can also tell you that the legal dispensaries are not going to won't be able to sell to minors, so that market's not going away, right? That market's not going to be gone. The cartels and the other folks selling marijuana are still going to be selling marijuana in the city. I don't think it's going to eliminate that. It may reduce it. However, the cost of buying at a dispensary versus the cost of buying it on the street is much more expensive because of the regulation and the taxing. So to answer your question, I think it's been successful in some areas and it's been a horrible nightmare in other areas if you do some research across the country on legalized dispensaries. So I have my opinion, but that I'll just leave it at that.
And I think Councilmember Barcena, I think there's another component here when we talk about the revenues. Obviously, it's up to the council what happens to the revenues, but there may be opportunity or potential there to utilize some portion of the revenues for increased enforcement or increased resources to to the police department, for code enforcement, for illegal operations going forward.
What would it take to improve our current regulation of illegal shops?
I'd turn that over to the chief. As far as the challenges that exist in identifying and then actually making arrests once you've identified and actually getting results out of those arrests, chief.
Well, we can go back to the Geek Mobile one, which is where we had the homicides a few years back. We were aware of it. We made arrest out of it. We filed the charges. And I believe they all got probation. They continued to carry on their business. We actually worked the case with a second time with the DA's office, and nothing came of it. It is extremely difficult to get filings on these cases, or you may get filings, but the penalty is not sufficient to the profit they're making, so they continue on. The biggest issue with the underground or illegal shops is the theft and the robberies and the violence that goes along with that, that we witnessed in our community, and several other communities have witnessed it the same, some of it from that same group. So I can't answer the question. I mean, we have liquor stores now that we continually do undercover operations in, and that, for selling to minors and illegal sales of alcohol. It's an ongoing battle, even with those, right? So this is just another one you'd be adding, that we'd be adding to those type of problems in the community.
Councilmember Chavez asked, I think, a similar question, but what security measures are required in a cannabis business when compared to, let's say, a bar or a liquor store?
Hello, oh, sorry. So the Department of Cannabis Control is charged with the task of implementing all of the regulations as it relates to every type of cannabis business. There are very strict regulations as it pertains to retailers. I would say they're probably similar, if not more stringent than alcohol sales. And then I will say that the draft ordinance that you have before you also has some very prescriptive requirements in terms of requiring adequate security and lighting, ensuring that security guards are licensed security guards. As I stated, strict compliance with all state requirements. So failure to comply with any of the state requirements, including the DCC regulations, could potentially be subject to revocation of a business license, or odor absorbing ventilation and exhaust systems. You didn't ask about that, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, because I think earlier a concern was in regards to the illegal business that was shut down recently, was that the business hours were questionable and there was a lot of in and out during the late times of the day. And with a regulated dispensary, I've heard that we would have the security guard, camera systems, routine inspections to make sure that everything is up to par.
Correct.
Okay. Would the hours be regulated as well?
There are some state default hours. I believe, if I recall correctly, it's from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The council can shorten those hours on a case-by-case basis, or constitute a stricter requirement if it chooses to do so across the board.
I have another quick question in regards to, the design or the limitations when it comes across in terms of how far each of them can be set up, right? So I know we mentioned the 250 feet rule. I know we mentioned, I don't know if it was 600 or one of those from schools, parks, daycares, nursing facilities, you name it. But I'm interested in understanding the difference, because I feel like a big, huge, perhaps the biggest notion or fear that our community has is the fact that there's going to be storefronts, right? These stores that essentially, just like in any liquor store, you can go and buy cannabis. But as far as cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and transportation, that's not the case. In fact, it could be where it's not even set up in the front, where it doesn't have the green cross, or it doesn't have that sense of that there is cannabis in this facility. So I'm curious to know, in terms of capacity for a city like ours, how does it differ from having a storefront to cultivation, manufacturing, testing, or transportation in terms of like the size? You know, do we need a huge facility for something like testing compared to as in storefronts and stuff like that?
So I apologize. There might have been some confusion when it was the different types of licenses that are available to the state were discussed. This sample ordinance does not suggest that any other cannabis activity use would be permitted other than retail shops. So no manufacturing, no cultivation, no testing. There are some, let's just call it, it's very difficult to regulate transportation. It's very highly regulated. There are state licensing requirements. It's basically transportation says I'm taking it from one licensee to another licensee. They may today just be passing through Bell Gardens as they go from one city to another. So that's what makes it very difficult to regulate those industries. However, this ordinance only has retail, and a large part of that is that the feedback that we've gotten is really that retail shops tend to have lesser impacts than other uses and are a little bit easier to regulate because they are out in the open rather than hidden, so to speak. And your sample ordinance does have some design standards that I mentioned in terms of providing transparency at the storefront level, so that it's not just kind of this hidden storefront that you're not quite sure what's happening. A lot of cities have instituted that, and retailers have embraced it and have, set up shops much like other retail shops or other commercial activities that you might have on your boulevards or your avenues.
And Councilmember Espinosa was mentioning too.
The reason
the reason is
I've seen that it's been a similar, I've seen other cities do that where they have cannabis dispensaries, but it's not storefronts. They have them in the background where you wouldn't even believe that it's happening. And at that moment, it's not having an interaction between a customer going into a store, buying it, because that's not going to happen, right? It's going to be something like cultivating it, manufacturing it. Obviously, transporting, I could imagine is difficult, because nowadays with apps and stuff, you can pretty much order anything. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, so yes, no, I think you bring up some valid points. I do want to bring up that delivery is different than transport. Transport is essentially is somebody who is really delivering between licensees as opposed to engaging in retail sales. Delivery is a retail sale that is within the confines of, or within the definition of retail sales, because it's a licensee making a sale to a person. This might be extreme, but I'm curious to know, what does it take to cultivate cannabis compared to as manufactured, or what's the difference between the two? Cultivation is really the growing and the agricultural part of cannabis. Manufacture really has to do with packaging, making certain products. There's a wide array of cannabis products that people enjoy, anything from pre-rolled cigarettes to drinks and other goods. That's really and packaging of those goods. So they're two totally different operations. They are regulated completely differently. They require everything is different, from the security requirements to the electricity and water requirements and other mechanisms they may use in manufacturing or cultivating such products. Thank you so much.
Any other questions from the council or comments?
Yes, I do. I do have other questions, and considering the large amount of potential revenue with this policy that we're looking at, I see no interest in it if we cannot make sure that this revenue goes directly to our residents' benefit. So my question will be, what type of mechanism can we put in place to earmark that money for specific purposes, such as homeless programs or mental health services or recreation and community services, in addition to educational programs about drug use, actually something constructive that our community can benefit from. Because other than that, it will be very hard for me to buy into something like this. So I want to know, how can we ensure that that money ends up going directly into that?
Yes, thank you, Councilman. There are two tools essentially at your disposal. The first is the development agreement, which allows the city to extract extraordinary benefits. If the council wishes to do so, they can allot that funding that is received from that development agreement into, let's call it, special purposes, as you mentioned, after school programming, drug diversion programs, that sort of thing. There is a process that needs to be followed in order to ensure that the money is allocated to those special purposes, but that is something that is within the city's discretion to do. The secondary tool that may be at the council's disposal, if the city council wish to tax these products at some time in the future, taxes typically go to the general fund. You can allocate such funds for special purposes, but I will advise the council that when you do engage in a special fund, that does require a 2/3 vote as opposed to a majority approval vote. So things for the council to consider when they're deciding how you want to move forward in terms of deriving such benefits. You don't have those same kinds of constraints with development agreements, but you do on the taxes. And that's just because they're revenue sources that are just regulated by two totally different parts of the law.
Thank you.
And Councilman Barcena, if I could add one more comment. If it is your pleasure to direct staff to draft such an ordinance, I would also suggest that your council also direct staff to come up with a procedure that would allow for such the special purpose funds from the development agreements.
Any other questions from the council?
Yeah, I have another question. I know I've been asking 100 questions, but this is such a hot topic issue. I know what we have today is a proposal or a ordinance direction for us to give ordinance in the creation to authorize and regulate commercial cannabis activity. And I just want to confirm that in this ordinance that potentially we are directing for staff to bring back to us to then decide on it, it doesn't include cultivation, manufacturing, testing, or transportation.
Correct. It explicitly prohibits such activities in your zoning code. We've gone so far as to actually continue to prohibit that. The only activity that would be permitted is retail activity. There's also language in the business permit regulations that also prohibit such activities as well.
Why?
Large part has to do with being able to use the existing regulatory systems, which is how the city has applied for the grant funding that's available for from DCC.
Councilmember, keep in mind that what staff provided you was options. So these are all the different uses that are available. The draft ordinance is identifying retail dispensaries as one of the uses. It does not mean that you can't come back to us and say, well, we want to include these other uses too. We want staff to do additional research on what revenue those other uses can generate. So what we're proposing to you is a more simplified ordinance with just the retail dispensaries.
Thank you so much for that. I think the issue that I think a large part of our community or our community has is the fact that it's being presented as storefronts, right? I think that's one part of the issue, because a lot of what the comments that we heard was in part that this idea or this notion that, cannabis dispensaries are going to be selling to minors, there's going to be storefronts with the green cross and things like that, right? Compared to as if we had cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and transportation. That's completely the opposite, right? It still has cannabis involved in it, but it's not necessarily a storefront. Now, I'd be interested in seeing, in comparison, the different amount of revenue that it can generate as compared to a storefront itself. right? Because in part, that's what a part of our community is afraid of, right? So that's something that I think that we should consider. I'm a little, I don't want to say thrown off, but I'm just feel like we only focus on the storefront section. What about the other 4 sections, right? How much revenue can be generated through those other different types of methods of cannabis, right? And in part, this is something that other cities have done. I don't know if we have a list of perhaps maybe neighboring cities that don't have storefronts, but that have just these other different sections that they don't have that thing staring right in front of your eye, you know, as you make a turn on the street or whatever the case is, just as we have with liquor stores everywhere around in the city, right?
Well, we can tell you that there are cities that have decided just to do the wholesale part of it. Baldwin Park being one of them. They decided no storefronts, just the cultivation, manufacturing, transportation. And yet there are other cities that decided just to do the retail. And then there's some that have a combination of the two.
So just to be clear, in the interest of time and sort of the maximum impact, what staff put together is the staff report that describes all of the options and a draft sample ordinance that would be strictly for retail. Obviously, there'd be more time involved for us to come back, and council could certainly, among all the choices council have, direct us to come back with additional sample draft ordinances for other pieces of the cannabis industry. But in the interest of sort of maximum value in time, staff thought it was prudent to bring to you the item that we brought to you here at this time. But we certainly could do additional work and bring back other options as well too, in addition to what's been brought forth here.
Understood. Thank you so much. No further questions on mine.
Any additional questions or comments from the council? May I have a motion?
I think it's important with such a big item on our table that the mayor is here to make any decisions. So what I would like to do is not necessarily table this, but bring an ordinance back at the next meeting with a resolution attached to it that will make sure that the revenue is going to go directly into our residents. So, for example, mental health services, recreation and community services, and along with that, the development agreement that can also secure tax for cannabis. So that is an option for the council to deliberate at that point.
And to be clear, Councilmember Barcena, so if staff were to bring back an ordinance, it would be through a public hearing. It would be 2 meetings from now. We'd have to notice it, but at that time we could bring such an ordinance with the resolution, development agreement information as well. In between that time, would also go to the Planning Commission as well. So I'm just clarifying that would not be the next meeting. It would be 2 meetings from now.
Would the mayor be able to vote then at that point?
Yes, Councilmember.
Correct.
And that would be a first reading. And even if it were approved by the council at that time, there'd be a second meeting as well. So there would be 2 opportunities.
Okay, that is my motion then.
Can we clarify the motion?
Yes, the motion is to come back with a resolution in order to secure a development agreement that will allocate the revenue to recreation community services, mental health services, and anything really that has to do with community services. And also give us the option to implement a tax, as Legal mentioned in her response. And of course, the point of this will be to make sure that the entire council is here to make a decision at that hearing.
I just want to clarify on this. It was that, so I remember in part, I thought the motion was to not move forward with this, wait until the mayor was present and then tackle this again?
The mayor will be able to vote at the hearing, at the first hearing. So as long as we have everything ready and the mayor is present, then I think we should be good to go. That is sort of the objective of my motion.
If I could just
Councilmember
clarify,
Senna, if I
Councilmember
may
Senna.
just clarify, I just want to make sure I'm clear that the ability to tax, that is an issue that would have to be put on a future ballot. We could not do it by ordinance.
Oh, okay. So
However, the
it's-
development agreement procedures, we can do by resolution.
Okay, thank you. Then I guess we will tackle any potential tax at a later point. Thanks.
And if I could just clarify once more, just so I can be sure I understand the motion, is the motion to direct staff to draft an ordinance along with a resolution that provides for those development agreement procedures inclusive of the special funds for community services?
Recreation and community services and mental health services.
Thank you.
And Attorney Paloma, to go to Planning Commission first, or if we could clarify that?
Yes, it does need to go to Planning Commission first, and it would come back to the council for 2 readings. So there would be at least 3 more public hearings.
So thank you for clarifying my motion. So I just want to make sure that the community understands that they can continue to be involved. This is not a final decision, and you will continue to be able to provide your comments during our meetings. So we're just moving forward with something that is a little bit better than this, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no point in doing any of this if we cannot make sure that we can give it right back to the community.
So can you clarify your motion, please? Just so.
Sure, legal, can you assist me with that? It's basically the same motion that legal stated.
My recommendation, if I'm understanding Councilman Barcena, is to move to direct staff to draft a ordinance to permit cannabis retail sales as long as well as a resolution that clarifies or that provides the procedures in which a development agreement could be executed, along with ensuring that there's a special fund for community services, mental health services, and recreational services.
That's correct. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Barcena and a second by Councilmember Pulido. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez,
No, with the caveat. I'm gonna go ahead and include that. Yeah, I'll say it after the roll call vote.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Yes.
And Mayor Cortez is excused absent.
We will now move to member comments, starting off with Councilmember Barcena.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to say being up here is not easy, but I want the whole city of Bell Gardens to know that this is very, very important to me. My experience growing up here in the city of Bell Gardens is very unique, just like everyone's experience. I see mothers here, I see fathers, I see daughters, I see everyone from our community. And I understand your concerns, and I legitimately care about your concerns. However, there are many questions that come to mind when I hear you guys speak. For example, when you tell me that your kids are having problems in school, when you tell me that your kids are being exposed to drugs, let me tell you guys something. Growing up here in the city, I spent a lot of time in the street. My parents were poor. My father was handicapped and wouldn't have much money. So I firsthand have seen my friends from childhood go to prison. I have seen them lose their mind. I don't know if anyone knows people that have lost their mind, whether for mental health reasons or for a combination of that and drug use. But all of that is happening right now. And it happened during a time when marijuana was illegal as you can imagine. I'm 39 years old. I'm speaking about high school times, right? A lot of these kids, they're in jail for life. A lot of them are dead. The notion that doing the same thing that we've done for the past 20 years, the notion that that's going to give us different results. I'm here to listen to you if that's what you believe, but I find it very hard to believe it myself. So I want to find a way to benefit our community the most that we can. And I see a lot of potential here in the sense that we can regulate a lot of these illegal shops. We can make sure that the revenue that right now is currently untaxed, we can make sure that that revenue is diverted and that it goes to services that are going to actually have a positive impact in our community. And I'm telling you that from the bottom of my heart. I'm telling you that because I know my friends, they're gone. Some of them are gone. Some of them are in jail. Everyone has a valid experience. So I want to encourage you to keep coming to the meetings, keep telling us what you believe. I'm listening, but I am also here to make a decision based on my life experience as an immigrant, as someone that grew up in Bell Gardens, as someone that continues to connect with the community. I knew more than 2/3 of the people here on a one-on-one basis. I'm working with them on special events. Our communication is improving day by day, but we need to continue that. So this is nothing final. This is just a step in the right direction so that we can find better ways to improve our city of Bell Gardens. So I hope that that made some sense for some of you, and thank you for listening.
Councilmember Chavez.
It's been a long meeting. It's already 9:18. So I do want to touch on a couple things. I'll start off with a lot of the fun stuff. So, obviously I know, as the city manager mentioned earlier, we have the fair coming up this weekend. That's going to be exciting. It's going to be at Ford Park. I'll be there attending. Make sure you stop by and enjoy it. It's going to be some fun. We haven't had a fair in a while, right? So I'm excited to see that. I want to thank the Department of Rec and staff, Recreation and Community Services. They had a spring senior dance back on the 27th of April. I got to attend. It was a great time. Seniors love to get down at the dance floor, and I really enjoyed it too. So it was we had a good time. Also, I also attended the 2 Cinco de Mayo events that we had. We had one on Cinco de Mayo and we had one on the 4th de Mayo. They were really well attended. The seniors really enjoy it. They really love the vibe right there. And obviously the entertainment is it's just, you feel that, right? And I really enjoy being around all of them. Don't forget, this Thursday, JB Burgers is reopening. I know we had the restaurant owner here, so that's exciting. I'll be attending from 12 to 1. So come out, support local business, and it'll be a good time. Touching on this topic of cannabis dispensaries and storefronts and whatnot, right? This is, again, right, this is one of those tough meetings because the weekend before, right? So we get the agenda on Thursday, give or take Thursday. That's when we find out when it's released to the public. And you get the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to kind of think about what you're going to say, how you're going to move it, what you want to do, essentially, right? This is one of those where we talked about street vending, right? And I think I mentioned how it's always difficult. And especially like a conversation with that, where on one hand, you want to support the hustle and you understand the entrepreneurship of people, but on the other hand, the mom and pops that have worked their whole life to get a restaurant and make it out, right? So it's a very tough dilemma, right? And on this conversation of cannabis, for me, myself, it was difficult to sort of walk through it when at the same time there is a lot of conversation about this topic, right? Cannabis, immediately our community is triggered and sees this plant, essentially, right? This plant that is the worst, that can end lives, that is the gateway drug to heroin and cocaine and all these other things, right? That's the idea. That is what our community sees. And unfortunately, right, we've seen case by case that's not true, right? That's not true. That's not the only thing that takes into effect to why people decide to do more other drugs, right? Perhaps it might be one or two, but it's not the ultimate reason, right? When I thank Councilmember Barcena for making the point that back when he was growing up, right? And he mentioned he's 39, I'm 25. I graduated from Bell Gardens High School like 8 years ago, right? So it wasn't that long ago. And I remember I got offered weed, right? I never took it, never did I do weed. I don't plan on doing weed to this day. Like, no me llama la atención. Like, it's none of my preference. I just don't want to do that, right? If you want to do that, that's on you, right? Now, obviously, Prop 64 passed. It's legal here in the state of California. Certain neighboring cities have decide to pass marijuana, right? Maywood's one of them. Lynwood's another one, right? Bell, I don't know if Bell's another one, but I mean, ultimately, we saw amount of cities that have passed weed and they managed to regulate it, right? I do want to point something out. whether marijuana in our city, cannabis dispensaries are legal or not legal, they're always going to be here, no matter what, right? We've seen that. We saw it with Savage Mobile. We saw it with Geek Mobile or we saw it with that, right? And in this case, they're selling to minors, guaranteed they'll be selling to minors. They don't have a security on top of their stuff. They don't have someone outside, right? At the same time, they have camera systems, these that are regulated, they have camera systems. Our city is on top of them. We're able to go in and check them out and see what's going on in there. We have control, right? That's the power that we have. Now, I don't think from one day to the next, I see Fiesta Tax. I think that's what the business was called, to then turn into Savage Mobile. How did that happen? How did that happen? It doesn't make sense to me. So whether cannabis is legal in our city or not, it was going to be here regardless, right? Now, ultimately, the city council took a decision, right? I include myself because we're a city council, we're a team, right? We represent Bell Gardens. This is our people, this is our community. And ultimately, we decided to move forward, and we request a direction of the creation of an ordinance to authorize, regulate commercial cannabis activity. Now, I voted no, right? I voted no because I asked a couple of questions, and I think I did ask a lot more than I usually ask questions. How about that? And the reason is because I decided to do my homework on this. Compared to cultivation, manufacturing, testing, transportation, all these other different avenues that we could have taken, right? Compared to storefronts, right? Now, I don't want to see that. I didn't feel that I was prepared enough to make that decision to do storefronts at this moment, right? And then also I have to remember back when I got into this position, right? I remember I mentioned that I ran on this idea that if cannabis ever came to me on city council, I would say we put it up for the voters to decide, right? Que los votantes de Bell Gardens decidan si va a ser marihuana legalmente aquí en esta ciudad. I remember that, and I'm not going to forget that. So ultimately today, a decision was made, right? We move forward. And at the end of the day, we have, at the same time, I understand our mayor wasn't here. I'm glad that next time we're going to have a full council. We have the public hearing. There's going to be the planning commission. We're going to have a second public hearing. We're going to have 30 days before it gets into effect, right? So I'm glad that there's all these steps taken into effect. And between now and then, who's to say we don't change our minds, right? So ultimately, I know I'm almost exceeding my time. So I just want to thank everybody. Thank you to the community. Quiero que todas las veces, las juntas del concilio que salgan a salir con nosotros, all the council meetings, I want everybody to come out here. I don't want you to come just because there's cannabis. I want you to come because there's other important things too. Parking, street vending, rent control, you name it. I want you to continue coming. So with that said, thank you so much. Gracias a todos. It was a long meeting. Era una junta larga, pero les doy gracias. Thank you.
Councilwoman Pulido.
I want to thank everyone that participated today. I too did my homework. And in doing that, I determined that this is the first step in drafting an ordinance that makes sense to our current community's makeup. I may remind you that a few years ago, our community did vote for cannabis, and I believe it was Prop 68. 64. So the community already gave us a form of feedback a few years ago. And I think in taking that information, taking commentary from the people that spoke here in person and also the emails, and in doing our homework, this was the first step that we took. And yes, we will have more meetings to come, and people will have an opportunity to continue to communicate with us and give us your feedback. Thank you so much. And I look forward for the following one. Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to thank the staff for still being here. I know that you guys have very long days. I do want to thank the community for being here as well and being so involved. I would like to see this amount of support constantly for other issues as well. I know this is a very controversial issue and a controversial topic, and that's why we had so many participants here today. And I think being here on the dais and being part of city council is a responsibility that is enormous. Okay, it's a responsibility that I personally don't take lightly, and I don't think any of my colleagues take lightly either. I know that I'm the newest council member here. When I first ran, I made it a point when I talked to our residents that I was going to be open to all options of bringing revenue to our city. Why? Because when we had COVID, we relied so much on the casino, and the casino shut down. So what did that do to our city during that time? So if this is an option that we can look to bring revenue to our city, that is the reason that, you know, I want to explore it more. I also want to recognize the police department for everything that they've done, you know, with illegal substances in our community. I know that the police week is coming up May 14th and May 20th. And it shouldn't just be a week to acknowledge you guys. It should be all year long, just like we acknowledge our teachers. This is Teacher Appreciation Week as well. And being an educator myself, I know how important that is to acknowledge those working. Small Business Month, I'm glad to see that, you know, JB Burgers is back in business. I also want to acknowledge Nursing Care Week. And I also want to recognize all the mothers. I know that Mother's Day is coming up, whether you're Mexican and you celebrate it May 10th or you celebrate it May 14th. You know, I think it's really important to acknowledge all mothers. So I do want to wish everybody a happy Mother's Day. And that concludes everything for today. Okay, so if there's no other objections by the members, I will now adjourn the City Council Successor Agency Joint Meeting at